Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be doing an early season check-in on our top 10 contenders in the NBA. Now, I'm going to emphasize again, top 10 contenders, not the 10 teams that are playing the best at this very moment, not a power ranking in that sense, but the 10 teams that we believe ultimately are the most equipped to contend. I don't know about you, Logan. There were several teams that I considered for my last couple spots, honestly. There were a few painful omissions for me, very close cuts. So before we get into the top 10, who was your toughest cut from this list?
My toughest cut is a team that I know you've mentioned on our show before that you have considered as a fringe contender or a team that has the potential to do some damage in the playoffs. I have the Philadelphia 76ers in my first spot off, and the reason I omitted them, I knew I was going to infuriate a very passionate fan base with whoever I took off of my 10 spot because, to be honest, in full transparency, I'm not really super passionate about any of these teams, and like the bottom, not passionate, I would say, but more, I don't actually consider them to be like legitimate championship contender teams. So like, that's where I drew the line. And ultimately, the reason I omitted Philly is I just don't think the Joel Embiid that this team would need to show up in the playoffs is in there anymore. And maybe he's in there and could, be there for a game. I just don't know if he could harness it enough for a complete run. I really like the Sixers top to bottom. I think they have an incredible guard rotation. I think they have great depth. Tyrese Maxey has been awesome for them this year. Like, there's a lot about Philadelphia I like, so I don't want to characterize this as like I don't like them as a whole as a team. I actually think Philadelphia, considering the circumstances from where they were last year and the hell that they seemed like they were going to be in for maybe the next couple of years with the Paul George contract and Embiid's regression, like I actually think they have found themselves in a pretty favorable spot. That being said, the distinction for me was the fact that I just don't think I can count on the version of Joel Embiid that team needs for a playoff run. So that's why they ended up number 11 for me.
Okay, Philly is on my list. I'm a little higher on them. My toughest cut, and I'm interested to see if they're on your list, Logan, the currently 13-2 Detroit Pistons. They were the toughest team for me to leave off, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be upset about that, and I truly mean no disrespect by it, Logan. I really don't. I think this team is going to win a lot of games. All right,
I'm
good.
a mess.
Good, as you should be. Push back on this. Their defense is amazing. They're second in defensive rating. They're top 3 in steals. They're top 3 in blocks. They are pretty much bulletproof as a defense. They've got a bunch of big athletes. They are really good in the turnover margin. They are currently outscoring opponents by over 7 points per game when it comes to scoring off of turnovers. They're a top 3 team in offensive rebound percentage, and what that means when you're a great defense, when you force turnovers, you score off turnovers, you keep opposing teams from scoring off of your turnovers, which is an area where we have to give Cade credit. His ability to still take on this massive on-ball load, but cut down on the turnovers compared to last year is significant and has helped this Detroit team on both sides of the ball. And that margin is valuable, and that's why I really, really considered them here. And then when you factor in the leap of a Jalen Duren, who I think has just been flat out phenomenal this season, and the depth that we have seen from this Detroit team, even as they've had injuries, a number of injuries, they went 3-0 without Cade Cunningham in the lineup even. Like, that was kind of nuts, and beat a couple teams who aren't pushovers. They beat the Bulls, they beat the Sixers. At the end of the day, though, when I compared them to the team who I do have in my 10 spot, I still prefer the playoff formula that team has because their offense is just significantly better than Detroit's, in my opinion. Magnitude's better. I still worry about the shooting for the Pistons. 27th in threes made, 22nd in three-point percentage, and I worry overall about their half-court offense. The massive burden that is being put on Cade, and as good as Cade is, and as much as he can take on this huge volume, and he's such an elite playmaker, and he's going to score with volume, I still think the core limitations that he has when it comes to his rim finishing being a big issue and his pull-up three-point shooting being a big issue, the inability to consistently self-create that sort of efficient offense still makes me worried about his ability to hold up at the level needed for this team to make a deep playoff run with this incredibly difficult offensive situation around him when it comes to spacing, when it comes to the lack of proven creators alongside him. What I will say is Jaden Ivey coming back has the potential to change this. And then making any sort of move for another skilled offensive player in the half court, another shooter, another ball handler. Detroit is doing so much well that would absolutely push them into my list. And if Ivey looks really good, then I think they will be there. I'll just say it outright. I was comparing them up against the Knicks, and we saw these two teams in the playoffs last year, and they really had a very close series. I do think that Detroit has clearly improved on the margins, and they have really, really shrunk that gap. Both of these teams are significantly flawed. At the end of the day, I think I would just rather bet on the elite offense, and so that's why I just barely have to leave the Pistons off.
So do you want me to get into it right now?
Yeah, unless you want to shout out any more omissions. I mean, there are a couple more who I think I should probably at least acknowledge, but I don't know who's going to be on your list, Logan. And that's the freaking fun of this all, isn't it?
The only other two teams I wrote down that didn't make my list would be the Lakers. I think they are extremely fake. I think that people can buy into Luka going superhuman. I buy into the offense. I think the defense is never going to be what it needs for this team to actually go on a run. And like maybe they win a first-round series. I don't really think this is the exercise. To me, one, I want to get a few of my prerequisites out of the way so you guys know how I thought about this. One, I am not doing, and I want to be very clear about this because I don't know if you are, Carson, I'm not doing any projection with my list. My list right now is if the season ended today, how I view these teams. And not like, sure, like if a guy is going to be available come playoff time, I may put that into consideration. What I'm saying is just like what they have put on paper, what I have seen from these teams at this point in the season. I'm not trying to, I'm going to drive myself crazy if I'm trying to do mental gymnastics and fill in the blanks of what could be. I am basing this off of what I think these teams are right now and what they have shown us on the court. But that's just important for me to mention. I just want to make clear that I'm not trying to, I just think I'm going to be jumping through all kinds of mental hoops trying to justify if I think about it like that.
That's interesting. I actually feel almost the opposite way. I think that some projection is pretty much necessary here just because, like, how many of these teams, Logan, are we seeing even at full strength right now? And how many of these teams are we seeing, like, fully engaged to their utmost potential on both sides of the ball? There are certain teams that have young players who I do think will get better as the year goes along. Certain players who I think just naturally, because we're only looking at a 12 to 15 game sample size right now, things are going to get better for them going forward. They're playing below their standard or they're playing above their standard. Things are going to regress to the mean. Some teams have good shooting luck right now. Some teams have bad shooting luck. Like, I just think there's so many moving variables. I really am more so thinking big picture. What do I think is real? What do I think is going to get better, get worse? And that does require projection, in my opinion. Let
me be clear about something, too, is like I am definitely thinking about how this is going to scale to the playoffs. That is number one. Yeah. I think that is a big thought exercise that we do here on every show. That's the most important thing in basketball is this going to translate to the playoffs? So I don't want to act like I'm not doing that, but what I'm saying is I'm not just going to de facto pencil in things that haven't happened yet as if they are going to happen. A good example for that, and I'll just let this out of the bag, not where they are on my list, a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, to me, I am very high on because I haven't seen Darius Garland at the level that he needs to be at. I am going to evaluate the Cavs right now as they have shown me. And so it's just like a check-in for me is what I would say is like, this list is going to change. It could change tonight. I could see something, from a team where I go, wow, that moves me. These lists are permeable. They, are going to change week to week, month to month. But this is like where my head's at right now.
I get it. These lists are definitely going to change. That being said, maybe I'm living way more in the theoretical world because I am, as best as I can with the somewhat limited information we do have right now, trying to think ahead to, okay, how are these teams going to look once we do get to April and we are looking at them in that playoff setting, but also how are all of these things going to hold up, get better, get worse, like I was saying. So I also left the Lakers off my list. I definitely think that's worth addressing just because they're the Lakers. They have a top 5 player. They have a LeBron James. They have an Austin Reeves. And so naturally, I think there's going to be a lot of hype around them. And they've got an 11-4 record right now. I just think a lot of the big picture indicators with them are not very good. Like some of the simple metrics, they're only 12th in offensive rating. They're 17th in defensive rating. They're 14th in net rating. And when we talk about playoff projection, there's so many interesting things that have to factor in there, right? Like I talk about how a team like Detroit is really good at creating margin in these certain areas that therefore means that their half-court offense doesn't have to be as good necessarily as your average team to still win in the playoffs because they are going to create more possessions for themselves. At the same time, I do really worry about Detroit's half-court offense, and I do still think that that is absolutely essential when you do get to the playoffs, when defense ratchets up a bit, when pace slows down a bit, and so I knock them for that. The Lakers are sort of the inverse in the sense that, like, they have this tremendously talented big three offensively, and you expect those guys to excel in the half-court, but the Lakers are so bad in a lot of these areas when it comes to playing on the margins that really concerns me, because if you're losing in those areas every single game, now you create a deficit that your half-court offense has to be so good to make up for that it's just difficult to sustain. Like, they have the worst turnover percentage in the NBA. They are losing by 6 points per game in transition on average. They're a pretty average rebounding team. They're a very bad defensive team, in my opinion. And so that means that there is such a burden on this big three in this offense to be great. And as much as you can look at these guys on paper and say, okay, Luka is playing incredibly well. I mean, his shot making, his inside the arc scoring, even though he's not getting to the rim like he used to, he's getting the free throw line at a crazy rate, the floater range stuff, the mid range, it's all been so good. He's producing with crazy volume. Austin Reeves, great offensive player already. He's taken a leap, has been one of the most prolific pick and roll scorers and creators in basketball. And then you add LeBron into this, and like, there's so much star power there. And yet, throughout last year, I think one of the mistakes that I made in being overly optimistic about what the Lakers could be is thinking, yeah, the offense has never actually been that great, but I think it's going to get there. And now we're just at a point where even though LeBron has only played one game, he just came back and he really coasted through it. This offense was 14th after trading for Luka last year. They're 11th in offensive rating this year. Like, there's this inclination to say with all the firepower they have at the top, they should be a top 3 or a top 5 offense, and that's going to be what pulls them through. But I do still think the role players around them are so limited. There are some redundancies with the skill sets of the big three where they aren't the most complementary to each other. You can't exactly squeeze the most juice out of having 3 guys who do all want to be primarily on the ball like they do, even though LeBron, Austin Reeves, they have their off-ball skill sets, right? But again, it's not the most complementary fit there. And then when you factor in the limitations of the guys around them and the defensive issues, I just still don't like how this team is built. And I just still don't think they have that many good basketball players. LaRavia has been pretty good. Marcus Smart can't shoot. I mean, he can be rough offensively, but he does some things on the margins that are actually good for them that they need.
I think you saw this a little bit in the first quarter of the game last night, and I don't know if they would run into this hypothetically in the first round. You tell me if you feel differently. The thing that kills the Lakers defense to me is the fact that I think they would get obliterated by any kind of quick guard that can shoot over the top.
Yeah.
Like Luka and Reeves. And that's what sucks is like, dude, Reeves is such a talented offensive player. Rui Hachimura is such a talented offensive player. DeAndre Ayton is an awesome offensive player. Like, there is so much aggregate offensive skill on this team. It's just not complimentary. It's like, I can like all of these guys individually. I just think when you put it all together, there's just not enough of guys doing the little other things, man. And, like, they can beat a team like Utah, you know what I mean? But, like, I just feel like them containing dribble penetration, them protecting the rim, them just defending in space. Like, I just think about Luka and Reeves against any kind of dynamic guard, and I think they just get obliterated.
I think athleticism and speed is just a problem for them on both sides of the ball. Again, teams are going to beat them up and down the court if they're fast and athletic. Absolutely, teams are going to exploit this very problematic defensive backcourt, which is, again, really bad. But also the problem is that the Lakers don't have the defensive personnel behind them. They don't have the wings. They don't have the rim protection. So it's just an all-around lacking defense. But then I also look at the other side of the ball, and obviously the Minnesota series last year was really rough for the Lakers offense, where they faced this super athletic switching defense, and Minnesota was really able to stagnate them, force all of their stars into tougher shot diets, and really keep them in check effectively. I think This year's offense is better because Luka is better, Reeves is better, and now they at least have that play finishing big in DeAndre Ayton, although I will say Ayton is also going to have some issues against the switching defense because he's not a good mismatch attacker. He's just a good play finishing big with his touch, his size around the rim off the roll. But I still think, like, if you look at the OKC matchup, I mean, they just got absolutely destroyed, and they couldn't contain the ball. Obviously, Shai is one of a kind, but that's going to be a recurring problem for them against elite guards. And on the other side, it felt like they were overwhelmed athletically by the elite defense that they were facing. And I specifically worry about that with Reeves. His reliance on using a screen to get an advantage offensively, I think makes him very susceptible to some letdowns against great athletic switching defenses that pressure the ball. Even Luka can become very reliant in that setting on his jump shooting, on the step back three. And OKC was able to force them into a bunch of turnovers. They just looked totally overwhelmed, totally outclassed. That's the Thunder. That's a juggernaut. That's a really high bar. But I do think, again, we've seen some of these issues recurring. So we'll see how much LeBron changes things here. I think LeBron is still really good. I think LeBron is still a top 15 player unless he takes a significant step back this year. But again, I just don't know that he is really filling the gaps that this roster needs filled. So I am lower on the Lakers. There's one more team I want to mention because I have been high on them early in the season. I left the Bucks off my list. I still think there's a lot of offensive firepower here with the way that they spread out around Giannis and empower him to be on ball so much. And I mean, the rim finishing numbers he's putting up are ridiculous. His playmaking has been so good. The reason that I've been moved off of them is I think the non-Giannis minutes have truly been that bad. They are now +8 net with Giannis on the court, -13 without him. And so when I compare them to some of the other teams that have more depth, that ultimately have more quality players, the Bucks are close. I just don't know, are they going to be good enough defensively? I really like Ryan Rollins, but ultimately, are there enough quality basketball players here? Can they survive whatsoever in the non-Giannis minutes? I just think things have gotten a little bit uglier on those fronts, so I did barely leave them off. Had to get those out of the way just because I do think there were a lot of teams contending for these last couple spots. But Logan, let's get into it now. Who do you have at number 10?
In my 10 spot, it's a team I've been pretty critical of, and I don't consider them to be a super legitimate contender. Actually,
Audible? Omaha?
Damn, I think I am. I think I'm going to bump them to 9. This doesn't make sense logically to me. Yeah, I'm going to bump them to 9. So actually instead, I'm going to put the Atlanta Hawks here in my 10 spot. I really like how Atlanta has looked with Trey, and we had, or without Trey, excuse me. We had a really long conversation with Tyler from Hoop Venue, and just like, how valuable is Trey? What does he look like? I do think in a game like last night, you see some of the shortcomings of this Atlanta offense against a really good defense. Like, they just fell apart late against Detroit. And I think not that I underappreciated Trey, but I do think I saw where he fills in the gaps for this team and where they really need him. And it's in a spot like that. Like this. The things I really like about Atlanta without Trey is the fact that there are no positional liabilities defensively. Everybody in the lineup has incredible size, athleticism, and skill. And with that, you can be a very good team. But late against Detroit, I'm sitting there going, I really like Detroit a lot. It will be a really ugly loss for them with how they've looked throughout this game if they drop this one without Trey. And they get some easy turnovers. They turn it into easy offense at the other end, and Atlanta kind of goes out sad. That is where I think Trey is needed for a playoff run in a big spot where they're just so limited without him. They can't create advantages in the half court, and that's where they need him. It's a double-edged sword because I think there are some real negatives that come with Trey coming back. I think there's going to be some initial dribble penetration that the backside of this defense is going to have to make up for a lot. I think that there are just some general size mismatches where one-on-one Trey is going to give up some easy buckets. That being said, I still know what kind of special offensive engine Trae Young is. And I think there are some very little things that I would still like to see this Atlanta offense squeeze out of Trae that could make this offense better. We've been saying it for years, Carson. If they could empower him more as an off-ball sort of player, where you could have Jalen Johnson creating. Like that, just where like he isn't so ball dominant, and
Yeah.
every possession isn't a shot or a turnover. But I do think they need him. And, as critical as I can be of Trey, of his defensive issues, of his turnovers, of his inefficiencies offensively, this is still a guy that at will can give you 20 points per game and 12 assists a night like that. And I can't take that for granted. And so that does make a meaningful difference for me when we're talking about this team as a playoff contender. And to compare them directly to a team like you're talking about, Milwaukee, I just don't think Milwaukee's got the dogs. And I've been impressed. Like, Giannis individually could just overwhelm a team to the point where he dominates them in the first round and they just get waxed. That's why I considered Milwaukee. Milwaukee was one of the toughest cuts for me. But when I look at them against a team like Atlanta, there is just an infrastructure difference for them where I go, wow, they just have 9 to 10 quality basketball players that I like. I just can't say that about Milwaukee, and that, to me, was the distinction. The fact that this team has looked really good without Trey. Trey does make a meaningful difference to this offense when he comes back. I think this team is still very complimentary to him, and I think they are going to gel. I said I'm not doing projection. I do think they're going to gel better as the season goes along. I think this is the situation where it's a little bit more needed. But, yeah, there's just a general talent difference that I see between Atlanta and a team like Milwaukee, and that's why they make my list. I debated them. I'll just say it. Them and the Knicks, I really debated between, man. And still I'm kind of debating it here, but I think I'll settle on Atlanta at 10, New York at 9.
Okay, I have that flipped. I have Atlanta at 9 and New York at 10. I buy the Hawks, man. I have been buying Hawks stock. I mean, I don't know if there was a team that I hyped up more relative to expectations throughout the preseason than Atlanta. I said, I think they're going to win 50 games. I took them to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and I thought that this was easily the best roster that they've had in the Trae Young era, and now they are obviously winning without Trae. They are 8-3 in his absence. This is another team that I love in terms of their ability to create margin. They are insane in transition. They're a top 3 transition team. I mean, they just have big athletes who are so comfortable attacking downhill in the open floor. Jalen Johnson is a monster there, one of the best in basketball. Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is very good in the open floor. Zachary Sesh is a great athlete who runs the floor hard, has good feel there, always been really good in transition. That has allowed them to compensate for some of their half-court offensive issues because they can just get out and run so much and they're so good there. And they are flat out an elite defense. They've been a top 5 defense since Trae got hurt and have been able to put together like this group where you've got elite point of attack defense with Naw and Dyson Daniels. Ridiculous. Like you said, great size everywhere. Long, rangy, athletic wings with Sesh and Jalen Johnson. And then you've got a great pure rim protector like KP when he's healthy, or you've got a more switchable alternative at the 5 in Onyeka. You've got an elite defender coming off the bench in a Mo Gay. Like, they do have a lot of options and lineup versatility there, but they've also just loaded up on good defensive personnel, big athletes, which I think is exactly what you want to put around Trae. I really think they've put everything around him that he needs to succeed and that this team needs to succeed. Great defensive personnel who can compensate for his significant limitations there. Good cutters, good play finishers. That's actually been a huge part of the Hawks' half-court offense in his absence. I completely agree with you when it comes to the limitations of this group offensively and why they need Trae. There are too many possessions in the half-court when it's just like, okay, who can actually create an advantage here? Who is actually comfortable enough as a ball handler? Who can get into the teeth of the defense? Who can bail us out by just like knocking down a pull-up jumper? That guy just isn't here, but what they do have is several solid ball handlers. Gilgeous-Alexander Walker has been the most legitimate like pick and roll creator, but Dyson Daniels has been so good just initiating actions as a playmaker, spotting cutters. Jalen Johnson is just flat out playing at an all-star level. I mean, he's been so damn good, giving you like 22, 9, 6.5 on elite efficiency with really good defense. He is not comfortable enough as a ball handler, not skilled enough in that context to be like a primary initiator for you at all. But again, he can do something of everything, and his all-around impact is so significant because of that. So that's what they've put around Trae. Now they have more good ball handlers. They have more good passers. And although their offense without Trae has been more predicated upon player movement, lots of cutting, ball movement. I mean, they have gone from towards the bottom of the league in passes made per game last year with Trae to top 10 this year. They're second in assist percentage in his absence. It's been this really nice team offense. they do ultimately need a guy who can be that legitimate elite playmaker, on-ball creator. But I don't think they have to go as absolutely into Trey ball as they have previously. They do have more guys now who can initiate actions, who can handle, who can make passes to Trey if he is going to operate off ball more. And I do think that's an option they have now to get him into his offense in more ways, where if he faces, say, the super athletic switching playoff defense, he is not as confined to, oh shit, now I have to attack in isolation, and that's just not where I'm at my best at all. There's more paths to get him into his offense. And so I think this defense right now is top 5. Put Trey back in there, significant minutes. Yes, that is going to force them to compensate more. That is going to make them a less great defense, but I still think they should be like top 10 there. And I think everything that they're doing well offensively right now, I mean, certainly in transition, I think they can keep that up with Trey back on the floor. A lot of the cutting stuff, I think they will keep up with Trey back on the floor. Again, I don't think there's going to be as much ball movement, but I think that's offset by the fact that Trey is just an actual really good offensive engine. So I think he can make them top 10 offensively, and then there'll be a top 10 defense. And when we think about some of the issues that Trey has had in the playoffs, where they are definitely reliant on him, I do think they can get him off the ball a little more. I think that KP should be the solve for Trey's limitations versus switching defenses, because KP is such a great mismatch attacker. So I just think it all works really intuitively to me. But this is a huge prove-it moment for Trey, because your team has been way better with you off the floor. They were 1-3 with you. You were playing poorly. They're 8-3 without you. So he absolutely needs to prove that the pros outweigh the cons here. This is something that we've talked about a lot this year, and I'm actually making a video about it right now, spoiler, that I'm really excited about, but just sort of exploring this moment in the NBA where more teams than ever before are winning without their star point guards, without point guards, period. And Trey is sort of the epitome of this dilemma of, yes, he's a great offensive player, but he's also a rigid and very flawed offensive player, and then he's a really bad defender. And where does the good offset the bad, or vice versa, when you have a team that can find another way to win with everything that they do with their athleticism, their defense, transition, etc.? Ultimately, I think this is a team that can still be really good in all those areas. Maybe not quite as great as they are without Trey, but still really good. And then they need him in the half court to make them a serious playoff threat. And I think he can do that. That's where I just don't agree with all the trade him stuff that's going on right now. I think he is actually really important to them because of the just core limitations their half court offense has without him. If he ultimately doesn't elevate them as a team, if he is so costly to their team defense, if he isn't efficient and productive enough in the playoff context, then you can start to have that conversation. If you land a top 3 pick in this draft, courtesy of the New Orleans Pelicans, and you can get a Darren Peterson, that would start to change maybe how I view this core. For right now, I love all the complementary wings they do have. I think they've built such a good roster. They need that offensive lead guard to me, and Trey is still that. And when he comes in, if he plays up to his potential, I think this is going to be a really good team. And compared to New York, just a more complete team. New York is the better offense. New York's defense is fundamentally flawed, though, and I just see more balance with Atlanta. I like their depth more. I like the margin they create. That's where I'm a little bit higher on them. But why do you have New York one spot higher?
Really, the only reason is just my confidence in it gelling fully together. It's just because I haven't seen it yet. Man, dude, to keep it a buck, and Knicks fans, I'm sorry. I'll try to spare you. I just don't like the Knicks, man. I don't like watching the Knicks. I haven't enjoyed watching the Knicks now for 2 years. I've been a resident
days.
I've been a resident Knicks hater and detractor for a while now. I wanted to leave them off my list. I think they're a little too talented, and the East is a little too weak for me to completely leave them off. It's just cat, man. I can't stand watching Karl Anthony Towns play basketball.
We did this last episode. We don't need to do this again.
And the reason I thought about having them below Atlanta, it's the same flaw that I've always pointed out when we talk about the Knicks. It is the point of attack defense. It is the rim protection that you have. It is the fact that your defense is consistently compromised by having 2 defensive weak points that badly, and I just don't think the depth is that great. That's it with the Knicks. I don't even know about the East, man. I don't know what the hell is going to happen in the East this year, dude. I'm just along for the ride, but I just think the Knicks have to be on my list at somewhere. I need to see it with Atlanta and Trey.
I get it.
Fully before I'm ready to put them above New York. I just have seen it with them.
I totally get it. And that's where, again, you and I are kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum here, where I'm Mr. I don't need to have seen it. I'm almost viewing this as like we're so early in the season. It's not like our preseason contender rankings, but there is definitely still that element of we know that we haven't seen everything. So what do I believe in? Where am I optimistic with my predictions? And that's where I am with Atlanta. And I do feel like New York has the same flaws that they've always had. And it's what you're saying, dude. Two catastrophic defenders on the floor at the same time at the core of your franchise, being your two best players ultimately. It's just so problematic. You get to the playoffs, and last year when Brunson and Cat shared the floor, New York had a 119 defensive rating. Catastrophic. Brunson is somebody you can put into every action and you can just take advantage of physically, and you're either going to get a favorable matchup off a switch or you're going to force them to put 2 on the ball, and now you've got a 4-on-3, and that's too easy. Cat is legitimately a catastrophic defender in every way except for his defensive rebounding. And so it's just so easy if you're a good offense with good process to exploit those guys, and that becomes more pronounced in the playoffs than it is in the regular season when the Knicks can put up a decent defense. They're 16th in defensive rating right now, and they do have some good defenders outside of those guys, but it's just not enough to compensate for a couple of major weak links like that. That's why I've always been lower on the Knicks than consensus too, and I still am. I have them in my 10th spot. I don't want to get too low on them, though. And again, I really consider them up against Detroit because Detroit just does so many gritty things that I like more in a basketball team compared to New York. However, I think this Knicks offense is legitimately great. I think this Knicks offense is better than last year. And I do think even though maybe we haven't seen it fully materialize yet, the offense is better suited for holding up in a playoff run than last year's offense, which was more stagnant, which was so dependent on Brunson and Cat hero ball, having to self-create so much. They're playing a little faster. The offense is more balanced. There's more ball movement. You have a guy like Mikal Bridges who's taking more of a playmaking load on. He's done well. Collectively, their three-point rate as a team is way up, so they're not living off of the tough mid-range stuff as much, especially like Mikal and OG.
They're getting out in transition a lot more, too, now.
Yeah, like they're just finding more paths to easy offense. Mikal and OG taking more threes, shooting it really well. This team is 3rd in offensive rating. Cat hasn't even played well. So that's where I think this Knicks team has improved from last year. The defensive flaws are what they are. That's not going to change, and that's why I'm low on this team. When you talk about them contending and people talk about them being like a title threat, I just can't get there with the defensive issues that they have. But they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and I think that their offense is better set up for the playoffs this year. And I do think that Jalen Brunson is just one of the best half-court offensive players that there is, and I think Cat can be very potent there. And I agree with you. I don't like the depth. It's a little bit better than last year. I still think that like a Josh Hart is a really funky player in the playoffs. Mitch, when he's out there, he does some really good stuff, but also like playing him alongside Cat obviously makes you really slow-footed defensively and makes your spacing a little bit weirder. I mean, Mitch is an incredible offensive rebounder, but there's just a weirdness with this Knicks team and some flaws at the root of everything that they do that makes me lower on them. And again, I do like the Hawks more. I see a more complete team there. I see a more versatile team there. I see a deeper team there. I see a better two-way team there. And yeah, maybe that's banking on Trey to be pretty damn good as a half-court creator in the playoffs. But I'm okay with doing that, especially if they were to play a team like the Knicks, which I just don't think has the personnel to make Atlanta uncomfortable offensively. So we'll flip there. Let's move into the 8th spot, Logan. Who do you have?
This is where I have the Detroit Pistons,
okay.
And I understand your skepticism in some of their areas. I just can't ignore how great this team's been. They've got 11 straight wins. They just had a wire-to-wire victory over Atlanta. I get it's without Trey. That's still impressive. It's their 3rd wire-to-wire victory on the season. And I just really do believe in Cade Cunningham. You mentioned it. I mean, they were 3-0 without Cade even when he missed. Just took over that game, though, in the 4th quarter against Atlanta, was just brutalizing them out of the mid-range. He's now got 5 straight games of 25 points and 10 assists. And I really like that formula. I love this team's identity. I mentioned it last time we talked about the Pistons, but the fact that they are number one in point in the paint differential. They score the most points in the paint of any team in basketball, and they are top 5 in paint defense. Jalen Duren really has improved, like you mentioned this season, Carson. I think in really all areas, especially his touch. Hit some big free throws in that game against Atlanta the other night. I feel like he's better defensively. He's better on the glass, more physically imposing. Like, defense is the big area, like positioning-wise and stuff like that. I always felt like was an area where Duren hadn't fully maximized like his frame and what he could be on that end, but I feel like he's gotten better. The depth is solid enough. I really like the addition of a guy like Duncan Robinson. I think they have complementary shooters and defenders on the wings.
Been balling. Duncan's been balling as of late.
I've mentioned this guy a bunch. I really feel like they found something in Dennis Jenkins. I think he is a real rotation asset and piece for them. So I want to be clear about this. Like, Detroit has a flaw, and their flaw is the fact that they need to figure out what their offense can be in the non-Cade minutes whenever Cade is not out there. I think Jenkins has helped a little bit in that regard. He's a good connective passer and can play make a little bit. Obviously, he's not great, but that's a big key. What does Jaden Ivey look back like? How you mentioned, I think we do need to monitor if they're going to make a move at the deadline or improve with another shooter or ball handler or something like that. They've also, again, been dealing with injuries. Sasser and LeVert have missed some time as well. But just how good can this offense be is the big question mark, because you mentioned some of Cade's shortcomings, the at-rim finishing, the pull-up shooting. I think they are important things to mention, but this team has such a high floor, and the thing I love most about Detroit is just how consistently they can impose their will to other teams. And that's what I'm banking on. I am banking on them being able to out-rebound anybody that they play. I am banking on them being able to play physical, nasty, mean basketball and slow you down in a way that other teams just can't. And Cade in this offense can do enough to win basketball games. It is not my ultimate, most favorite formula, but I really think it's a damn good one. And I'm really high on Detroit. Now, I want to see them do this against real competition. I think they have had a pretty favorable stretch of a schedule to start the season. I think that is a component of this hot start. Over the next 10 games, there are 5 games that I'm really looking at for Detroit. Milwaukee, I really want to see what they can do against a guy like Giannis. I think, what does their defense do to him? Because that is a potential first-round matchup maybe for this team, right? Against a Tier 1 superstar, how do they look? So they've got 3 games against Milwaukee over the next 10. That's important to me. And then they've got individual games against Miami and Orlando. Again, just good, solid teams. We're I'm not going to be really moved by Detroit beating up on some bottom dwellers. They went to OT versus Washington, right? I want to see them do it against some teams that I think are legit. We've got some games in this next stretch that I think they're going to be able to prove themselves. But that being said, I'm really impressed. And I am sold on Detroit as a better contender than some of these other teams like we're talking about, man. Let me see. They are in the East. They're the second highest team I have in the East right now. So that's where Detroit is for me.
The margins are really slim. I talked a little bit about some of the concerns that I have about Cade still offensively as that 1A number 1 option with a huge load on his plate. But what I want to emphasize is that is really within the context of his offensive surroundings. I just worry about the overall half-court skill in Detroit. I worry about the spacing. I worry about playing Ron Holland and Javonte Green big minutes. I worry about Asar Thompson, as impressive as he is in some ways, and how functional his half-court offense can be in a playoff setting. I just think there's some big flaws there that ultimately I need to see improvements upon.
I also don't want to bury the lead. I mean, with his team is second in defensive rating right now, that is the strength of this team.
100%. 100%. That's a given, and that's where I agree with you. The floor for them is so high. That's how they've been an average offense, a below-average half-court offense, and they're 13-2. So if they do get a little bit more offensive punch out of a Jaden Ivey, if Cade can play even better, as this year goes on. And I do think that he will start shooting better from beyond the arc. It's been really rough early in the year. He has gotten to the line more, which I think is good for a path to efficient offense. Again, I think that the rim finishing issues with him are just so consistent and so pervasive that I can't just say, oh yeah, I think that's going to get better. But the overall situation here offensively is what concerns me in the half court.
Let me ask you something. So these are all based on teams' likelihood to go on a playoff run and to win the NBA Finals, correct?
Yeah, I would say generally make a deep playoff run. I mean, I think there's a number of teams on this list who really have no chance to win it all.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what we're ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody that you have above Detroit on your list that you would choose to lose in a head-to-head series against Detroit that you still think has a better chance to go on a playoff run? Or do you just feel like Detroit is just worse than all these teams, period?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I look at a team like Atlanta, and I think that would just be a really interesting matchup because I think Atlanta has a lot of really good defensive personnel that they could throw at like Cade, for example. I also think Detroit probably has one of the best defensive formulas when it comes to making life really hard on a Trae Young, when it comes to having an elite perimeter defender they can throw at him like an Asar Thompson, when it comes to having multiple dudes who can switch and hang in that matchup, big physical athletes. And so then I think there's more pressure on KP to be really great in that series. And even he, when you're going up against like big, strong wings, if it's even a Cade off a switch, if it's even a Tobias Harris, like those aren't super easy mismatch stacking opportunities. I could see that being really tricky for Atlanta. But then again, I could also see that being a tricky series for Cade. And so it kind of comes down to whose aggregate talent do I believe in more? And I just lean on Atlanta a little bit there because they have more ball handling. I think they're the better transition team. And overall, I do still view Trae as the better offensive half-court player than Cade Cunningham. New York, I think those teams are right there. I think it would literally come down to who plays better. So all of these teams are in the same range. To answer your question, though, it's not necessarily that I think, oh, New York has this trait that makes them much better equipped for a deep run, or Atlanta has this trait. It's just kind of like I buy into their formulas a little bit more with New York's elite offense, with Atlanta, again, creating the margin defensively in transition that they do, and then just liking their half-court offense at full strength a little bit more. That's what it comes down to. Shout out to Jenkins, dude. He's been a really good find for them. Like, shout out to B-Ball Paul. We talked about him absolutely obliterating the Chicago Bulls. Like, the Pistons have been a really fun story this year. I think that they are overall in a very encouraging spot, and their turnaround over the last couple years has been incredible, and they're going to win a lot of regular season games. I just still have some concerns when it comes to deep playoff run potential. That's where I'm a little bit lower on them. But I am absolutely open to being moved on this, and the margin is very slim between them and the couple teams I have above them. In my 8th spot, Logan, I'm going to take us back out west. I've got the San Antonio Spurs here, who unfortunately are going to be without Wemby for a bit. Logan, you're gobsmacked. You're absolutely gobsmacked. Why is that? Where do you have the Spurs, you crazy kid? He's mewing. He's mewing on the pod. Oh, my God. Well, that's interesting. Wemby is out now with a calf strain. That's a bummer. I've seen some people overreacting to that, in my opinion, just in the sense that I've seen a lot of people saying, like, Wemby's never going to play 65 games in a season, so he's never going to have accolades. I just think that's a bit of an overreaction. I think that's a bit of a projection of, like, the expectations of, 7'4" guy is going to get hurt because it's always been that way. This is the first injury Wemby's had. I mean, he played 71 games as a rookie. Then, yes, his season was ended short last year, obviously. That was because of blood clots, though. Like, we hope to God that's an outlier one-time thing. I just think some people have jumped the gun there. I'm not worried yet about Wemby having injury problems consistently because I don't think we've seen any reason. This is one calf strain. It's unfortunate, but he should be back in 4 to 6 weeks. I think the Spurs can survive in his absence. Stephon Castle is also out for a little bit right now. This is where having De'Aaron Fox back is huge for them right now. But we're talking about contender rankings here, so we're talking about upside. We're talking about playoff outlook, and there, obviously, Wemby is everything. Wemby being a basketball god, like, that is the basis for most of my faith in this team. He is obviously the best defensive player in the world. He makes them an elite defense almost single-handedly. They have good perimeter personnel alongside him. They have good athletes. Like, that is why they are as good as they are this year. But obviously, Wemby is more transformative on that side of the ball than any other player in basketball. And I just really believe in his offense elevating the entire team offense in a different way than we saw even last year out of him. I understand that he has had his issues when he has been doubled aggressively, when teams have been super physical with him, when they have really tried to get up in his airspace and force him to beat them as a passer and maybe tested his handle a little bit more. I think he's going to get better against those looks as he sees them more throughout this year. I'm not saying that he's going to solve it. I just think he's going to get better, and he's gotten so ridiculously great as a scorer in single coverage with his improvements inside the arc as a driver, as a post-up player, better footwork, more comfortable playing through contact, a little bit stronger, better handle. Like, you have to send multiple bodies at him every time. And even if he has his flaws against those looks, I still just think always putting your defense in a compromised position means that the opposing offense is still going to do pretty well. Like, again, it's not just, oh, Wemby's been getting his numbers. Wemby has made the Spurs a top 8 offense this year. And on top of that, now they have a legitimate high-level guard in De'Aaron Fox who has been really good since coming back, who does bring that creation off the dribble, that pick-and-roll scoring, some of that pull-up shooting. He's been getting to the rim a little bit more in San Antonio than he was his last couple years in Sacramento. I'm not saying he's going to get back to his peak levels there, but that's been a little bit encouraging. And then I just like the totality of, like, the wings who they have here. Again, it's not great, but, like, there's solid depth there. And there's a couple of bench players here who I just love. Like, Luke Kornet, I think, is one of the best Wemby backups, if not the best Wemby backup that you could reasonably have. He is so elite as a rim protector, so good as a rim finisher. We've seen him and Wemby play together very successfully. That's a great look. Dylan Harper, I think, is already one of the best bench creators in basketball. He's obviously been hurt, but just so damn effective getting into the paint, finishing, such a good passer already. I think they've just got a really nice, balanced roster at full strength. They've got a surefire top 5 player in Wemby, and another team that is able to, like, create margin in some ways that matter. I think they can really dictate with their athleticism. They have elite rim protection for 48 minutes between Wemby and Kornet. They have a lot of dudes who just put pressure on the basket, right? These athletic guards, Harper, Castle, Fox to an extent. Obviously, Wemby is just a monster paint scorer too. And then they're never allowing teams to score in the paint, so they are overall better than plus 10 points per game in terms of the point in the paint differential. These are all the reasons I'm encouraged about San Antonio. I'm wondering how much higher on them even you are, because I guess my only holdup is, even though this roster has definitely overachieved my expectations, and I feel like I like the totality of the role players more, I guess I still just don't think they are as talented when it comes to, like, upper echelon contributors than the teams that I have above them. But how much are you drinking the Kool-Aid with these Spurs, Logan? Talk to me.
I've got the Spurs in my 4 spot. Every time I watch the Spurs, and I know this sounds crazy because I was also the dude who said that Wemby could average 35, 13, and 7, but, like, dude.
Say it again.
Every time I watch the Spurs, I have a creeping, like, voice in the back of my head that's like, Wemby's just unstoppable. Like, what if he just gets to the playoffs and, like, there's just nothing you can do with this guy? Every time I watch them, like, it just looks so easy. And I just wonder, is this already just going to be the year? Like, because I said it when I made that take about Wemby with those crazy benchmarks for totals. It was a matter of when, not if. And I think the Spurs taking this leap to top 5 contender perennially is a matter of when and not if. And I just wonder if it could be as soon as right now. And I get it. Maybe if you're thinking about the last stretch of games that they played with Wemby, they lost back-to-back games against Golden State. I thought they were right there in both of those games. I think that San Antonio is better than Golden State. I would take them. They are above them in my contender rankings, even though they lost both of those games. Also, Damn, I wish Fox had thrown that lob on that last possession to Wemby over the top, man. I think that was the right play instead of taking that. That's a tough spot. There's 2 seconds on the shot clock. I just thought, I don't know, Wemby threw his hand up. I would have thrown it up there. I think it would have been an easy dunk.
Yeah, that was tricky. I don't disagree that would have probably been the right read. That being said, I kind of think people acting like that was like a crazy bad decision are doing him a disservice. Obviously, when the shot clock gets that low, like first and foremost, you're in score mode. He's rising up. Draymond is still in a position where he could at least deter that pass. Like, at the end of the day, if you throw the ball as high in the sky as you can conceive of, Wemby's probably going to be able to catch it. You can just put him in a spot where Draymond can't get to it. But if you throw a not-so-great lob, Draymond, I think, is definitely ready to close that window and contest that pass. So it was okay with me. I mean, Fox didn't play well down the stretch of that game for sure, but I didn't think that was like a catastrophic decision. I don't know. I think in general, like, there is this component with Wemby of, again, throw the ball in the vicinity of the rim and he can finish it. And like, you should be looking to do that as much as possible. At the same time, when basketball is being played at full speed and you have arms in your face, like, you just can't make every pass to Wemby that looks like it's open, It's not to say that they couldn't be feeding him even more, but I also don't want to act like every time we should rag on them for not making one of those passes.
That's fair. That being said, even though Fox didn't play that well against the Dubs, he makes a huge difference in their playoff outlook and what they could do in a playoff series. They need a guy like De'Aaron Fox this season. And if he's going to be here, like, he makes a world of difference. He is a 25-5 guy, or around that can weaponize his physical traits pretty much against anybody, getting downhill to the rack. He doesn't get downhill as often as he used to, but when he does, he can normally manufacture pretty easy looks, and he converts at a pretty high rate. I still wish he would get downhill more. He still settles for a lot of mid-range jumpers and three-pointers, but I will say having Fox as the number 2 instead of the number 1 in your team offense has led to him, I think, getting a higher shot quality just by way of playing alongside Wemby and in here in San Antonio. But yeah, Carson, I just really like the team that San Antonio has already put alongside Wemby so quickly. I think they complement him. I think Kornet, like you said, is a massive addition for this team, and there's just a ton of athleticism, defense, and quality players that I like alongside Wemby right now. Again, I don't want to bury the lead here. The reason that I have the Spurs at number 4 is Victor Wembanyama. Yeah. And if they get to the playoffs, Wemby is the type of player that already we're in year 3, right? That in year 3, I look at every single game I watch him play and go, wow, that guy could just take over and be the best player in any playoff series that he plays in this year. And that's why the Spurs are up this high. But I do think this team is really talented around them. There's a ton of athleticism. They get out on the break. They play really hard defensively. I think my biggest concern would probably be the half-court offense, and if Fox and this team around him could generate enough offense if they really disrupted Wemby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's a tough defensive matchup, if they're sending doubles and a ton of personnel at him, if they were able to generate enough offense off of him. But the Spurs make me feel tingly, man. They give me a special feel every time I watch them play, and I wonder if it could already be this year, man.
Wow, so you're really high on the Spurs. I am interested in that because, like, they've been awesome on both sides of the ball, and this defense is going to be one of the best in basketball. Like, I don't know. Wemby, to me, is already one of the 4 most impactful players in basketball. I'll say that. I think that he's more impactful than Luka Doncic. I think that the floor of a Wemby game is so ridiculously high. Even though his offensive production floor isn't the highest, again, the gravity that he has offensively is so crazy now. And obviously what sets the floor so high is that his defensive impact is the best in basketball night after night. The deterrence, the rim protection, the ability to anchor the glass at such a ridiculous level. I mean, even his ability to guard in space as needed. He's crazy. He really makes everything go for this team on both sides of the ball. I guess it's going to come down to how godlike is Victor Wembanyama this year. That's what it's going to be. Because if he gets to a point where, like, he is dissecting doubles. He cuts down on the turnovers, the assist pickup, and he is like pretty much flawless offensive engine by the end of this year, then yeah, I think the Spurs would have to be in your top 5 contenders. And even though I'm overall optimistic about like him having this major offensive impact no matter what, I still think there's some significant challenges that need to be worked through for him as he is seeing these coverages that have given him more trouble. Fox is really interesting. He clearly makes them better, but he also does have his limitations of not being an elite playmaker. As you mentioned, he's a really good rim finisher. His free throw rate is so low right now. I mean, this is a guy who used to take 6 or 7 free throws a game, and I think he's at under 3 per game this year. So that's where he's been shooting it well as a pull-up shooter from beyond the arc. The volume has gone up there, but we also know that Fox can be more volatile in that respect. So I guess I'm just not confident enough in the people around Wemby to have them that high. But Wemby, the future GOAT, does give this team a really high floor and is so absurdly impactful on both sides of the ball. And like I do overall like the construction around him. That being said, in my 7th spot, I am going to go with the team that beat the Spurs in back-to-back games. I have the Warriors here. Some of the early season metrics would not indicate that like they belong this high. They're 9-7. They're 17th in net rating. I feel good about them though when we project to how they will fare throughout this season in the playoffs, and they're checking off some important boxes for me. When we looked at this team coming into the year, you knew that there was going to be a major load on Steph Curry, your offensive superstar, and Jimmy Butler, your other offensive star, 2 guys who are in their late 30s at this point, who were playing at a really high level last year down the stretch, but how are they going to hold up through another full season? Steph is averaging 28, 4, and 4 on 64% true shooting. He has been unbelievable overall. He's even driving and getting the line more this year than he has like in years. I don't know how much we can expect that to continue, but he has certainly come out of the gate significantly stronger than he did last year. Last year, he hit his rhythm in the last 30 games. He was playing like a clear top 5 player, but early in the year, he was struggling a little bit more with this crazy offensive load on his plate. He is still more prone to clunkers at this stage. Of course, that's just kind of inevitable with his age. But the explosions are as frequent and as potent as ever. And just ask the Spurs about that because they got him back-to-back. So, like, still, to me, easily one of the 4 best offensive players on the planet. No question about it. Jimmy has been playing really well. He's giving you 26 and 5 on 67% true shooting. So the play of those guys to me has been really encouraging. They're doing what they need to do for me to believe in this team making a legitimate playoff run, at least being a good playoff team. And then when you look at some of the role guys, I like what they did with the depth for this roster. I praised that. I still don't think we've even seen it fully realized because DeAnthony Melton hasn't suited up. I really like him as a 2-way role player guard for this team. Al Horford has been not playing back-to-backs. He hasn't played many minutes. He hasn't played very well. I think that he is a meaningful upgrade for this team at center with his shooting, with his passing field, with his defensive versatility. He gives them another look that they can go to. So again, we haven't even seen that pan out yet in terms of those veteran additions. But when you look at some of the young guys, Moses Moody, I just think, is significantly improved as a shooter. His mechanics look so clean. He has cut out the little hitch that he had in his shot, and he just looks more fluid and comfortable and confident stepping into these things than ever before. And Logan, the guy's making 44% of his threes on 6.5 attempts per game. He made 6 threes in the first quarter the other night. Like, I'm not saying that he is going to be a super dependable offensive contributor for you necessarily, but I think he's clearly better than last year because of that shooting. I think they need to continue to lean into more Moody, less Kuminga. That's the shift that they started to make, and now Kuminga has been banged up with this day-to-day injury. But even though the sample size is small here, it feels very right to me that they are a +8 on-off swing with Moody on the floor, and they have a -10 on-off swing with Kuminga. Like, I just think Kuminga got off to a really good start to the year, and then he fell back into a lot of the same bad habits that have always plagued him. Moody is somebody who better understands his role, who complements this team better with what he brings defensively and as a pure shooter and cutting and just like being willing to buy into the role. Last year, Moody was in their most effective 5-man lineup and their most played, and like I just think he better suits what they need. But another really good find for them in terms of role players has been Will Richard, who like immediately this year it was clear like, okay, this is a guy who they got with the 56th pick. He's legitimately good. He's started games, like the cutting, the shooting, the defense, the feel. He's another guy who just fits what they need. So overall, the Stars are balling at absolutely the level that they would need to inspire confidence in me. I feel better about the depth, and I just know this team has a very high two-way ceiling. We saw it down the stretch last year. We saw it for 30 games where they were an elite defense, the number one defense in basketball, and the offense was totally flowing. Obviously, Steph sets everything into motion, but having this really high three-point volume, having a team that is ultimately high field, that knows how to move the ball, having a guy who can connect everything like Jimmy, who can settle the game down, getting to the free throw line, who can get himself a bucket at least in spots and produce with the sort of volume and efficiency that nobody alongside Steph had been able to do in recent years. It's all very encouraging to me. I like the lineup versatility more than last year. I kind of just like everything more than last year. And this is a team that was 22-5 when Steph and Jimmy played together, and then they won a playoff series, and I think that they're better. Pods, I think, has been playing a little bit better this year, pretty similarly overall. Like, am I the most confident in the supporting cast offensively in a playoff series? No, but I think that they have more dudes who are playing like legitimate quality pros than they did last year in that Houston series when it was like make anybody other than Steph beat you, and Houston was at least able to force it to 7 by adopting that strategy. Again, this team isn't flawless. They've got to cut down on turnovers. That's always been the thing that's plagued the Warriors, but they're 27th in turnover percentage. I believe they are 8-0 when they win the turnover battle and 1-7 when they lose it. So because of the creativity and the player movement and the ball movement of this motion offense, like turnovers are always going to be a consequence of that. But the Warriors are also just kind of susceptible to like sometimes bad turnovers, sloppy turnovers, and you want to minimize that as much as you can. And then I would say the bigger concern is still just size, athleticism. They are still a team that pretty much gets bullied in the paint overall. They're dead last in points in the paint scored. They have a negative 12 points in the paint margin. Horford, although I think he's, again, clearly an upgrade at center, he doesn't fix that dimension of having like that sort of rebounding, rim protection, or paint scoring impact on either side of the ball. So those are the couple of things that I worry about with the Warriors, and yet that didn't prevent them from being an elite team down the stretch last year. And again, like a lot of these key sort of swing factors, if you can call them that, I just think have been going well for them. So they've had a couple of bad, dumb losses, but I'm not discouraged. I think against good teams, they've actually played quite well this year, and that is more meaningful to me.
I don't even pay attention to the turnover thing with the Warriors anymore, man. That's just like, it's kind of like a coin flip. I feel like it could just kind of happen any game.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just such a strong indicator of, are you going to win this game or are you going to lose this game? And like, it was the Pacer game, I want to say, or was it the Bucks game? I can't remember the two games that they gave away against these injury-decimated teams. Like, they just had so many bad turnovers down the stretch. But I know what you're saying. It's kind of an inevitability of Warriors basketball.
Or it's just like, yeah, sometimes they come out and they're just out of sync, and there's, bad passes and stuff like that. I couldn't count the Warriors out. They're also in my number 7 spot. I still really believe in the old guys, Steph, Jimmy, and Dre. Steph still got it. Steph's got every bit of it, man. Like, I've said this. I didn't turn the Magic game off last night, even though the Warriors were dwindling, and I'm sitting there with 3 minutes left. They're down 12, and I'm like, all right, Steph, let's kick into gear, because I have turned off 2 games now where the Warriors were down double digits, and Steph made me feel really shitty about it. So I don't count the Warriors out ever. If Steph is waking up, alive, breathing, the Warriors have a chance to win basketball games. Like, cool. I believe in Golden State. Where I draw the line with them is, one, I completely agree with you on the size and athleticism point. That is a huge limiter. When we're talking about a lot of matchups that they could run into in the West, man, when I look at them against a Minnesota, a Houston, a Denver, and OKC, like literally all of the top dogs in the West, I think that is a huge difference maker in hypothetical matchups between them. The other thing is the depth. I still think they are kind of thin and rigid in some of the things they can do. Now, I agree with you. I think they have gotten better in that regard compared to years previous. I still think it leaves something to be desired, where I'm like, I think the margin of if Steph has a non-Steph game, I think you are just going to lose. I don't think that is any overcoming. Like the Nuggets, right? Like in this, it probably isn't my best example that I can use. Like last year in the playoffs, right? Even against OKC when Jokic had a bad game and like the supporting cast picks him up. I don't know if this Golden State team is able to overcome a non-superhuman kind of Steph game in like a big spot, a playoff scenario. Although I still do believe in Jimmy and Dre. Jimmy, I think would be the most infuriating player to guard in the NBA, bro. With how he draws
to the free throw line every time.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
Like even against Orlando, dude, he looks like a ballerina out there spinning and twirling and drawing fouls. He's infuriating. I think the Warriors are a really competitive team. I couldn't count them out. These are the things that I think would come back to bite them in a playoff series. So yeah, I would have them 4 or 5 out west for me.
Okay.
The one thing I want to ask you, where are you at with Jonathan Kuminga again? Because I was never really moved by the stretch of basketball that he was playing. I still feel the exact same way that I felt before the season started, that if they could move him for another guy with some offensive juice in ball handling and scoring and playmaking punch, I would do it in a heartbeat. Sacramento, if you guys still want Jonathan Kuminga, take him and give the Dubs Malik Monk.
I totally agree. Because the biggest issue that I didn't specifically mention is the offense in the non-Steph minutes. I mean, it does fall apart oftentimes, and that's where you talk about their ability to survive an off-Steph game. Even when Steph isn't shooting well, I mean, he's still really impactful offensively just because he demands so much defensive attention off ball. But that gives them an ability to create really good shots for other guys when he's on the floor. When he's off the floor, though, they still just desperately need that other ball handler. And that's why I love the Malik Monk trade that was proposed in the offseason. I would absolutely circle back and do that. I am pretty much back where I was with Kuminga too, man. Like, he bought in for 3 or 4 games, more so than ever before. He was playing the best that he ever was as, like, the resident Jonathan Kuminga pessimist and somebody who has just said, like, I'm done with the experience. I had to take note when he was being more selfless as a passer, when he was shooting better, when he was more active on the glass, when he was just playing with better feel offensively, cutting, picking his spots more. But now, again, he fell back into all of the same issues that he's always had. All that stuff pretty much regressed, and he was taken out of the starting lineup, and now he's banged up. So, yeah, I still think he's somebody who you should be looking to trade. I don't think the league is high on Kuminga. Last indications were that the league was not high on Kuminga, and that's a huge reason why this thing has dragged out as it has. But if you can look at the Sacramento Kings, who, like, now more than ever are in seller mode, dude, as everything is falling apart in Sacramento. They're trying to move off of everybody, and they've never appreciated Malik Monk. My glorious king, Malik Monk, the one and only Malik Ahmad Monk. They don't appreciate him, and I can guarantee you, Malik, if you came to Golden State, I would appreciate you. I would write songs about you. I would write poems about you, and you would make the Warriors a legitimate top 5 kind of contender, in my opinion. Like, I think having one more legitimate offensive creator, scorer, playmaker of that caliber who can carry the non-Steph,
it makes a massive,
so much difference.
It makes a huge difference.
It would. It really would. So I'm high on the Dubs. I think they're really good. I think they have good synergy as a team. I think they make sense. I like the fit. But at the end of the day, they're just not quite talented enough still to be like in these top 5 kind of conversations. So I have them at number 7. Where exactly do you have them, Logan?
Same spot. I have them also at number 7.
So who's in your 6th spot?
I have got a team I was just talking about. I have the Minnesota Timberwolves here in my number 6 spot. And I really like Minnesota. Obviously, Anthony Edwards is a superstar talent. I really trust him in a playoff scenario to kill teams that don't have the kind of backcourt personnel you need to hold him defensively. Such a freak athlete, so good as a pull-up three-point shooter. And in comparison to them against Golden State, I love their depth and infrastructure compared to a team like them. I think they are so big, so athletic, so skilled, and they just have better depth, top to bottom. I think they just have more guys that I like in their rotation. And the bigger thing is what I'm mentioning with the athleticism. They can just impose their will on teams more. They can actually win the rebound battle. They can win more inside and defensively. And, I was critical of Gobert earlier in the year. I've been impressed. I think Unk still got it. I think Gobert's still good.
He's holding opposing players like 19% below their average inside of 6 feet. He is so crazy defensively still.
I really thought that we were going to see some more regression this season, and I was disappointed with him. Yeah, a little bit. I don't like Rudy. But he's still got it, man. So I think the floor for Minnesota is so incredibly high. I think another really encouraging thing about Minnesota this season is the offensive growth that we've seen from a guy like Jaden McDaniels, who I think has continued to get even better. Last season, you saw it with him from behind the arc shooting. You saw it with some of the stuff he was doing in transition, finishing through contact. Like, I've continued to be impressed with him. So he's even better. There are two things that I just think you need to monitor because, again, I think this is such a high-floor team. I think what you were getting exactly with this unit. The two things to monitor, to me, the biggest thing is Ant's development as a playmaker and as a mid-range shooter. I think that is going to determine a lot of it. Again, you think about some of these high-leverage matchups that they are going to be in against Oklahoma City, right? Like, that is the matchup where he is going to have to be immaculate as a playmaker and immaculate as a mid-range scorer because OKC knows how to defend him, and they have got a bevy of defenders to throw at him. The other thing is Julius Randle, and Randle was great in the first two rounds of the playoffs last year, and we've talked about this a bunch. Also, I just want to give Randle credit. He's been awesome this year. I think Julius Randle really fits this team. I think he plays his role really well. He is bought in. He looks way better than he did with the Knicks. I've been so impressed with Julius Randle. Is it going to translate against the best defense in basketball? I lean no. And so I think we have entered, and you know what? I wouldn't include Golden State in this bunch. I think this is a bit of a tier separator for me where Golden State's with everybody else, and then I would say Minnesota and everybody above this line is upper echelon, where I think we really enter into bona fide, I think these teams could win the finals kind of tier. That being said, because of some of these flaws and shortcomings, Minnesota is going to be here at number 6. And I don't know, man. I don't really know, and maybe this is short-sighted of me, I don't really know what Minnesota could do to really get them to move out of this spot for me.
I see what you're saying. I absolutely have a tier break after Minnesota. I have them in my 5 spot. Maybe I'm not woke enough yet about the 2026 Spurs. Maybe I'm just holding out a little bit longer. But I had a tier break here before the year after my top 5 teams, and I still feel that way. But I also have always felt that Minnesota is the 5th out of the 5. And like you're saying, where is that leap going to come from? You could look at Ant and say, okay, if he really does improve as a playmaker, as an intermediate scorer, that could be the source. Maybe him being like a infallible offensive number 1, which as good as he is, he's not quite been yet. I think we can write off the possibility of it coming from the point guard position. Like people who are really high on Dillingham, it's just not going to happen this year. Like, not even close. I think that the Timberwolves are better off just not playing with a point guard. Like, I love the fact that they've been starting Dante. I think that he's been a total positive and a better player and still a good fit for this starting 5. So I'm with you there. And when I look at the top 4 teams, I'm just a bit more compelled by their superpowers. I mean, the number 1 team should speak for itself. But when I think about the Denver, the Houston, the Cleveland offenses, those are absolutely insane groups. Like, coming into the year, I would have said Denver and Cleveland, those are the 2 best offenses in basketball. Houston has now been the number 1 offense in basketball. And yes, there's a little bit more funkiness there that, like, I don't trust to hold up quite as well as Denver or Cleveland's, but I can't deny that Houston is a top 5 offense in basketball at this point. And, like, their funkiness is also their superpower. And everything has just gone so well for them to start this year, and they have this elite defensive talent. So I get to the Timberwolves, and I'm like, they're really damn good. They're just not quite as good as those other teams. But like we know, they're going to be top 10 on both sides of the ball. They're a top 5 offense right now. this is just such an easy spot to put them. Like, they're a really potent offense. They have got big, strong athletes, Ant, Julius Randle, who can create dribble penetration and then kick out to great shooters, who, in the case of Julius Randle, can mismatch stack and then find shooters or score himself. Like, they're top 5 in 2-point percenters. They're top 5 in 3-point percenters. They have this awesome combination of paint and rim pressure and then really good 3-point shooting. I think Julius Randle's playing his best basketball ever. I think Jaden McDaniels is playing his best basketball ever and has continued to show a little bit more offensive chops. I think Ant should have his best offensive season ever because I think the pull-up shooting that we saw last year is real. And we have seen him using the mid-range a bit more this year and more effectively. He made it a priority even in preseason. We've seen it translate now where he's shooting 47% for mid-range on over 3 attempts per game. That's not like a seismic change from where he was at in terms of volume last year, but it is worth noting.
When you don't want to you don't want that to be your go-to.
100%. That's always been where you want Ant to land, where it's not his go-to. It's not something he's overly reliant on. It's something that he can turn to when he needs it. It's something when, if you have to break down a defense that is loading up on you, a defense that is packing the paint, you've got to have that intermediate shot making. And it's been an encouraging start to the year. Like, again, just something to keep an eye on. We'll see how that progresses. But we know that they're a damn good defensive team. They've got great perimeter athleticism. They're physical as hell. They've got an elite point of attack defender in Jaden McDaniels. I do think the loss of Nickeil Alexander-Walker matters. Like, we talked coming into the year about Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr. Those are good young players. They can probably reproduce a semblance of what Na gave you last year. I've always really liked Na. In fact, I said last year, I mean, when they were looking at the situation between Na and Naz Reid, I think Na is the better player, but they have more closer amalgamations of him than they do of a Naz Reid, who's so important to their lineup versatility at center. I don't think that Jalen Clark and Terrence Shannon Jr. are anything close to Na, honestly, who has just continued to be even more impressive in Atlanta. They're solid players, but there is a loss there. But they have a Rudy Gobert, still one of the, in my opinion, 3 to 5 best defenders on the planet. Like, they're just so dependable. Back-to-back Western Conference Finals, not a fluke. I know what I'm getting out of them. I just think, again, the couple teams above them have A++ traits where I'm like, yeah, I think you're just a team with a little bit more upside, a little bit more offensive potency.
Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
I think my least... Okay, let me be clear about this. Damn, I don't know, man. I think Minnesota actually is... I was going to say that Minnesota was the second... And I do believe this. I think Minnesota is the second best matchup for a team like Houston. Minnesota's a really good counter to Denver and both Houston, man.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's really them against OKC is where I draw the line. Like, I'm kind of 50-50 against a Minnesota-Houston series. I'm definitely slanted more like, I don't know, 80-20 Denver-Minnesota. I think Denver would get Minnesota back, but I think Minnesota's got a pretty good recipe that they could throw at Denver. Like, I just want to emphasize that point, that, like, the gap to me, it's not massive between them and Houston and them and Denver. The gap to me is between OKC and everybody else. But I do think that Minnesota and Houston would be a really, like, Jaden McDaniels, just how they match up with each other. Jaden McDaniels against a Kevin Durant again. Gobert banging with their big bodies, right? Randall banging with their big bodies. And Ant, like Ant versus a Men Thompson, I think would be a fascinating matchup. Like, I just think that, again, I do lean Houston, but it's not a huge gap between those teams.
No, you're right, because Minnesota, with their size, their athleticism, their physicality, they can counter pretty well a lot of what Houston brings to the table there. Like, maybe negate the advantage on the boards a little bit. They're a really good defensive team. Ultimately, I do still like Houston a little bit more. I mean, I still think that Houston would win the battle on the boards in that series. I just think they are more talented offensively. I mean, Şengün has just gotten so great as a creator and a playmaker. They have Kevin Durant, who it's just tough to see not walking into like an efficient 25 a game in a series. And then you think about like the unique problem that Amen presents to a defense, even though he hasn't played his best this year. ultimately, I still buy into the margin that Houston creates and actually their half-court offense. But you could argue, okay, Minnesota can offset that with a great Ant series, with a great three-point shooting series. That's really where they have the upside. They'd have probably the best player in that series, and they definitely have more of that three-point shooting upside. So I'm with you. It's close. But I think you also make exactly the right point. I mean, if we're ranking the next three out west after OKC, Denver to me easily has the best formula to beat them because they have a Nikola Jokic, because they have the best offense. That's pretty simple. Then I think it's Houston because Houston has the potential to overwhelm them with their size, to overwhelm them on the glass. I still think Houston offense runs into some issues against an OKC defense that can exploit their lack of ball handling more with crazy pressure there, that I think can really shrink the floor on them, that can be so aggressive in gaps and so fast, and I think just force them into more turnovers, make life harder on them because they don't have that like actual lead guard. But Houston has more uniqueness that I think they can throw at OKC, which is what you need. Minnesota, I just think we saw last year. They're outclassed in this matchup. I think Julius Randle turns into a pumpkin in this matchup because OKC takes away everything that he wants to do offensively. He can't mismatch attack. He can't even comfortably handle against them. And I just can't see it. So that's one of the reasons that they land at 5 for me. And then if we're talking about Cleveland, I think Cleveland has a hell of a long path to beating OKC. I still like them more than Minnesota to do so, though, just because I think everybody's offense is not going to look the same against OKC, but Cleveland's offense is really special. I mean, the shooting that they have, the multiple elite pick and roll creators, the play finishing bigs that they have, even like just the genius out of pick and roll, what they can do in transition. There's just more firepower there. So that's part of the reason I land on Minnesota at 5. I think they have the least upside to beat OKC. And I also just think like all of these teams should win 50-something games. But as balanced as Minnesota is, again, I don't think they have that same elite trait that you do have with Denver, with Houston, with Cleveland, all teams that should ultimately be able to defend at least pretty well, very well in the case of like a Houston and even a Cleveland, although they're more flawed there. So that's why I land on Minnesota at 5, but I wouldn't even consider anybody else above them. Again, maybe I'm sleeping on the Spurs. I think the Spurs are really good. I have a different level of confidence in Minnesota's formula. I've got a real haymaker to throw at you here, Logan. I think I'm going to knock you in the jaw, and I think you're going to be shocked. In my number 6 spot, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. This is definitely involving a little bit of projection. And honestly, once we got out of that tier break after the top 5, all these teams are pretty close for me. But I've been so impressed by Philly. I think that they have moved me about as much as any team early in the year. A big part of that is I just think Tyrese Maxey has taken the leap, and like we got to have some real conversations about him among the best guards in basketball. The guy is averaging 32.5, 5 and 8 on 60% true shooting. This is not a 5-game stretch. We're 15 games into the year almost now, and he's doing this. And his shot diet, I like so much right now. Just getting the line more than ever, being this absolutely insane pull-up three-point shooter, and maybe those numbers aren't going to quite hold up, but like, I'm just so impressed, dude. He goes out there every game. He gives you 30 plus and 8, and he's improved as a passer. He is elite at limiting turnovers, and it's not just that he's this pick-and-roll machine. He's a great spot-up scorer. He's a great transition scorer. Like, are you shaking your head no, or are you shaking your head yes? Are you not with me that, like, I think Tyrese Maxey is just flat out a top 20 guy now.
No, I mean, just the craziest thing to me is how he doesn't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
I don't, like, that has always been, like, that's always been a special thing about Tyrese Maxey. I think, I don't know, either a year or two ago, he was, like, the only player in NBA history to record X stat line with this few turnovers or something like that.
2 years ago, he averaged 26 points per game with 1.7 turnovers per game. It's crazy.
And it is crazy. I just can't believe that he's doing this while playing 40 minutes a night. It doesn't make any sense.
Dude, like, his energy is endless, and he is always putting you in this bind of, I'm ridiculously fast, and I am ridiculously lethal as a pull-up shooter. Now, I still would like to see that 2-point percentage a little bit higher from him, That's been an issue for him where although he's fast as hell and he's compensating for this by getting the line so damn much right now, which is fantastic. I love that. But he has never been a great at-rim finisher. He can rely on the floaters a lot, which he is good but not elite at. But I don't know, man. It just feels like this dude is leaving defenses helpless, like, basically every night. And even though he's cooled down a little bit recently, he still really hasn't much. And just taking on that sort of offensive volume, being the sort of legit offensive engine that he is, like, that has impressed me so much. And then VJ Edgecombe, he's come back to earth a little bit when it comes to, like, the finishing at the rim, which was an area we wanted to see some improvement from as a prospect, just the touch around the basket. He got off to a really good start there. That has come back down to earth. The intermediate shot making, where he was like surprisingly good early in the year, that's come back to earth. I still think he's a stud. I still think he is ridiculously potent in transition. I still think he shoots well off the catch. I still think he is super hard to stay in front of and a high field playmaker and a great positional rebounder and just an all around really good basketball player. And Philly just has so many good basketball players, dude. Like, I was higher on them than you coming into the year. I still underestimated this roster. I mean, I've always liked Maxey. I say it all the time. He was my favorite pick in the 2020 draft. I said he was the most skilled scoring prospect in that draft. He went 21st. I'm always going to brag about that because he's turned into such a great player. I didn't think he was going to be this good. Like, he's blown me away. I liked VJ a lot. I didn't think he was going to be this good. And then you just go down the depth pieces like, Quentin Grimes is so good, dude. Oubre, just with what he brings for you athletically, and he's been shooting the ball well. He's a quality player. And I'm talking down to, like, the Trenton Watford, like the Justin Edwards. Like, they just have quality basketball players on this team. They have big, good athletes who can do multiple things for you. They're great in transition. They're a really good shooting team. And so because of all of this, I mean, with this youth, this athleticism, this energy, this guard creation that they've had, this wing play, they're 8-5. They're 10th in offensive rating. They're 18th in defensive rating.
Two guys that you didn't even mention. Like, I think with their infrastructure, with all the offensive talent they have too, like having guys like Drummond and Bona who can just come in and like do little roles like that, like protect the rim and grab boards, really gel with this team. Like, they don't need, scoring punch from that spot. I like them in the roles they play in too.
And Logan, Joel Embiid has played 6 games. Jared McCain has played like 15 minutes for this team. Paul George has played 1 game. If they were without all of those guys for the whole year, those are 3 of their top 5 or 6 players, they'd still make the playoffs because that's been the level they've been playing at without those guys. That's how good, that's how deep, that's how potent I think this offense is. And then you add back in, like, PG should be the best version of the sort of wing players we're talking about. Justin Edwards, I like the guy a lot, but we're talking about Paul George here, who even after his regression, still elite shooter of the basketball, still somebody who brings you a little something as a creator and a playmaker. He doesn't drive anymore, which is why he's regressed, but if he's just giving you like 17, 5, and 4 on good efficiency with plus defense, that's a huge addition to this team still. Jared McCain, I still think there's room for him to fit in and be like one of the 6th man of the year front runners if he's healthy enough, plays that many games. Like, he is legitimate pull-up shooting punch. He is a real explosive scorer of the basketball. And then there's Joel Embiid. And it's like, I don't think that Joel Embiid is going to be a top 10 player for you when he's on the court. But I think that Joel Embiid can still be top 20 in terms of his impact when he's available, just through sheer rim protection, through the shot making he still has, the foul drawing he still has, the levels of defensive attention he demands. He's not the best fit with how they're playing right now. And like, I do like the offense running more through Maxey. I like them getting out in transition as much as they do. I just like him setting things in motion. Again, he's just so explosive. He's so dynamic. But it's Joel Embiid. And like, he is still somebody who potentially can take over, if not a series, a couple games within a series. And then you've got this guard who's averaging 32 points per game and 8 assists per game. And they've got good complementary wings, and they've got the talent to be a solid defense and a really good offense. I just see the ceiling here as being so high. And that's where, when we're doing a contender ranking, like, I do value that. When I think about the upside of this Philly team, it's really, really high, man. And I do think they have the 2nd highest ceiling in the East. Like, just the total combination of all the areas in which they can be good to great. I'm so impressed. So tell me why I'm wrong. Push back. Be a pessimist. Pour some cold water on me.
Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is not going to be a top 20 guy when he's available. I don't think he's a top 20 guy anymore. I don't know if he's top 25. I don't know if he's top 30. I don't know what Joel Embiid is anymore. And that's my gripe. I'd love this roster. I think this roster is great. And again, and I mentioned in honorable mentions, if you had told me this is where the Philadelphia 76ers were going to be considering their circumstances last year, holy home run. That's a grand slam. Like, the 76ers have crushed the Grimes acquisition, drafting, and obviously there's a little bit of luck involved, right, with getting a guy like Edgecombe, but they've killed it. They've crushed everything about after making the miscues of, and I won't even consider, like, the Embiid thing is just it's circumstantial. There's nothing really you can do about that. The real misstep was the Paul George contract and how much money they allocated to him. They have pitched a perfect game ever since. How you like that, man? 3 baseball analogies. Let's go.
Beautiful. Let's go. You're a pro.
You do have me rethinking. I can't lie. You
like,
do have me rethinking.
Here's what I'll say about Embiid, Logan. I don't think he looked particularly good when he was out there. In fact, I think statistically they've been a little bit better with him off the floor. Very, very small sample size there. But just to say, it's not like he was transforming this team's success. And I don't think defensively he looked his best. I do think his mobility, which was always his issue, has just continued to get worse. And still, Logan, per 36 minutes, Joel Embiid averaged 30 points, 8.5 rebounds, 5 assists per game on 58% for shooting. That's while shooting poorly. That's while not being in rhythm.
And
there's just a production floor with him because of the sheer size, skill, and craftiness as a foul drawer that, like, is so high. So even though he's not the best fit, like, I don't think he has to be their best player. I think Maxi's that good. I think Maxi is, like, a shoo-in for all NBA right now if he keeps anything close to this up.
I agree with that. My thing is, and I don't think the numbers are going to reflect this, and maybe there's some bias of mine because I haven't been a Joel Embiid guy for a long time here when I say this, but I kind of wonder if Joel Embiid is a detriment to this basketball team when he is on the court. Like, he is very slow. He is very rigid in his play style. I just wonder if he makes them worse. And let me be clear about that when I say that. At his best, Joel Embiid obviously makes this team better. And at his best now, I'm not even saying at his MVP Joel Embiid is gone. I'm saying the absolute apex that Joel Embiid can give you, his ceiling on a game-to-game basis now at this stage in his career, he is obviously a positive, right? At the drop of a hat, can give you 30 and 6 rebounds really efficiently, right? He can give you that right now. My take about him making this team worse is when he is at his absolute floor, when he is missing jump shots, when he is taking the offense out of rhythm, when he is not getting up and down the court anymore in transition and not busting his ass. That's my thing with Embiid. And I like your take, though. I really like your take. And I'm seriously wondering if I should have them above the Hawks or the Knicks. You do have me reconsidering some things.
I'm with you on not loving the Embiid fit. And I think you pointed out, like, where he can kind of be to the detriment of this team. I still think the talent just outweighs that. I mean, it's a small sample size. When he and Tyrese Maxey share the floor, Logan, this team has a 129 offensive rating this season. And that's a small sample size, but, like, come on, dude. I think what they have to fully embrace is we're playing Tyrese Maxey ball. We're playing basketball as we've been playing it, and we're going to fit Embiid in within the context of this, but we are not going to, like, have the same super Embiid-centric, operating overwhelmingly as this face-up player out of the high post, getting a million touches a game, slowing down our offense a bit. Like, when they had their meltdown against Chicago, both Embiid and Maxey were really bad. I mean, Maxey was just taking bad shots. I still wanted the ball in Maxey's hands. I just felt like Embiid can stagnate the offense more, and Maxey has just gotten so damn good that it's like, give him the keys all the way, even when Joel Embiid is on the floor. And like, Embiid, by the nature of not being a great play finishing big, again, isn't the best compliment to Maxey there, but he still demands so much attention. He's still a great pick and pop big, like, and he's so productive. I don't want to be blindly optimistic about the Philadelphia 76ers. And I don't think I am being that. But coming into the year, I would have thought, this is a team with one of the biggest floor-to-ceiling disparities in basketball, depending on what we get from Embiid, what we get from Paul George. And now I think the ceiling has just gotten higher, but maybe more importantly, the floor has gotten way, way higher. My thought was going to be, if they get a big old thumbs down from Embiid and he can't play, this team just isn't going to be that good. Now I think they've proven they are legitimately good even without him, even without Paul George, even without Jared McCain. And yeah, man, I just like what they're doing the most. And I think at full strength, their flaws are less significant than some of the concerns I do have about Atlanta's half-court offense, Detroit's half-court offense, New York's defense. Philly has the potential to be the best, to be the most potent offense out of that group, to be a solid defense. So I'm in. I really like Philly, and I'm going to bet on the talent, and we'll see. Paul George didn't play well in his first game back, but I thought at least physically he looked okay, and there's still a lot to learn about this team. If you're not doing projection, then the Sixers are not the team for you. But if you are doing projection, I think there's a vision there that I'm willing to buy into. Let's get into the top four, Logan. This has been the same since the preseason, at least the four teams in this group for both of us. So who lands in your 4 spot right now?
Actually, that is not factually correct. Carson's
not factually
lying
correct.
on the beat.
Okay, sorry, it's true for me. Oh, wait, you have the Spurs. I'm so sorry.
I have the Spurs at 4. You're good. It is a bonkers take.
Wait, so who's at 5?
The team that has slipped for me, I have Cleveland in my 5 spot.
Wow.
And again, this is because I don't have projection involved. It's just what I've seen. I just haven't seen it from Garland. And the reason that Cleveland is here is just because of that. That Cleveland has the highest chance to climb out of any other team on my list, in my opinion. I think they are going to get there. It's just because I haven't seen Garland at full strength, and I just need more answered about them. I think they are exceptionally talented. I love the depth. Oh, my God, I just love watching Cleveland Cavaliers basketball. Lonzo Ball was such a sexual addition to this basketball team. Dean Wade is an awesome basketball player. I'm just because
Jalen Tyson. Please mention Calvert, Jalen Tyson.
Jalen Tyson, good Calvert. We always give props. Donovan Mitchell is one of the flamethrowers in the sport. One of those microwave kind of guys where you just get him to rock and he can explode in an instant.
A Donovan Mitchell scoring spurt, it's one of the most sexual experiences in basketball. And it's just every time down the floor, he is either pulling up and raining a pull-up 3 on you, or he's getting past you and he's doing some ridiculous, if it's the windmill gather, some ridiculous spin mover, inverted Euro, that combination of just insane athleticism, but also craft downhill, and then he can launch threes over you. Oh, there's nothing like it when he just takes over. There isn't. It's crazy.
It is, man. And he can do it. I can't remember what game it was, but he had 15 in the first, 12 in the third, 15 in the fourth. There is nothing quite like it. Mobley, stud. Jared Allen, stud. I like Cleveland top to bottom. It is literally just about I need to see Darius Garland at full strength. I need to know that this toe injury is fully behind him because I think he is vitally, vitally important to this team's postseason success and them going on a deep playoff run. That being said, I still do think Cleveland has a big flaw that I am not ready to ignore when we talk about them getting out of the Eastern Conference, and it is their backcourt defense, where I feel like in a lot of hypothetical matchups against a lot of these teams that we've discussed, they're just going to get bullied and moved around, and those two guys are going to get picked on in a matchup over and over again. Can they overcome it? Maybe, but I do think that is a big flaw to their finals formula. They are still my favorite out of the East. Again, I think if I was doing projection, I think Cleveland would have to be in my top 4, like you mentioned at the top of the segment. They would be, but again, I'm not doing that, so we'll see what Garland looks like. I do think they eventually get back into my top 4 to top 3 range by the end of the season.
Yeah, they're just too talented compared to, the Spurs. This is a team that just won 64 games last year and fell apart physically in the playoffs, but I really don't think we saw indicators that, there was something wrong with the Cavs roster construction, right? Jared Allen was underwhelming. Garland, I'm always going to have the concerns about him defensively. I think his offense is fantastic. I think his offense totally holds up. I think he's one of the best offensive guards in basketball. He just couldn't fucking move because his toe was broken last year. So I'm always going to be a Cavs optimist. I have moved them down from my preseason number 3 ranking to number 4 here. That's not because I've gotten lower on them. It's because I've gotten higher on Houston, who I have been so impressed by. But even though the Cavs haven't looked their best this year, they haven't felt like the absolute seamless offensive juggernaut they did last year. They've been without a guy who was playing at an all-NBA level last year in Garland. They've been without Max Strus, who I believe is one of the best offensive role players in basketball. They've overall had bad shooting luck. This is a team that was top 2 in threes made and three-point percentage last year. They've been 19th in three-point percentage. You got a guy like Lonzo shooting below his expectations. DeAndre Hunter shooting below his expectations from deep. Like, there's a lot of reasons to think the Cavs are going to look significantly better than they do right now. And I actually think, even though they're not going to replicate probably 64 wins, top 20 net rating in a season like they did last year, I believe that this roster is probably going to be better come playoffs than they were last year. Jalen Tyson, like, I'm not joking when I talk about the Cal Bear. Obviously, I'm a propagandist for Cal Bears, but this was a pick that I loved at the time because I just, first of all, really believed in the talent, but also felt like Cleveland really needed a sort of do-it-all wing like him.
I just also can't believe I haven't mentioned Naquan Tomlin either, man. I mean, like, you're talking about, I was just thinking about, like, depth guys. Like, I do. Like, this team's, like, dead-ass 11 deep, man. Like, 11 deep guys, like, that I like. I do think their depth's a lot better than last year.
Jalen Tyson is shooting the shit out of the ball. He's a crafty offensive player. He's good off 2 feet. He can drive. He can make reads. He's a really competitive, strong, athletic defender. Like, he's just really good all around. Maybe I'm not as high on Naquan Tomlin as you are. I do think their depth has been stretched further than you would usually like. You know, I haven't loved all the Tyrese Proctor minutes for sure. But that's because they haven't had a Strus. That's because they haven't had a Garland. Even like a guy like Sam Merrill stepping up with just like this crazy volume shooting like he is, you know. Basketball Jesus, they call him, whatever they call him, because he's Mormon. Shout out to a Mormon legend from Utah State. But he is just a hell of a shooter of the basketball. So overall, when you consider like a guy like Merrill looking better, Jalen Tyson like being a legitimate, meaningful addition here, obviously the Lonzo fit is the biggest thing here. It does not eliminate my concern about this team when it comes to their defensive issues in the backcourt, but it does alleviate it a bit. Darius Garland is always going to be crucial to you reaching your best offensive ceiling, but you can still be an elite offense with Donovan Mitchell, a bunch of shooting, a Mobley on the floor, and now you have Alonzo who connects things offensively, can knock down shots, make plays in transition, and is a legitimate good defensive alternative. So I just think they can put together more balanced groups than last year, and they overall have more options. You know, they've got a third playable center now in Larry Nance, who hasn't played super well to start this year, but who I do believe is like an upgrade that they didn't previously have there. I just think they should be a better overall team. I think Mobley should be better this year than he was last year. His paint and mid-range and free throw touch has just been off. Like, he's been bad in that range overall. But the three ball has just continued to get better. I mean, he's shooting that with more volume. He's doing even more handling and playmaking for this offense this year. He's getting to the free throw line more. He's been excellent defensively. I just think he's become even more assertive and even more versatile offensively. He just has to be better at finishing plays in the paint and ideally get more play finishing opportunities right at the basket. So I don't know that it's like, ooh, Mobley is going to be, you know, around the 10th best player in the league this year, which was kind of my hope for best case scenario. But I do think he should be better overall than last year. And I just don't think that we've seen this team like at full strength playing up to their potential. This was the number one offense last year. This was a top 10 relative offense in the play-by-play era. This is a team that offensively checks every box. And, you know, they lost to Ty Jerome, but they still have the most dynamic offensive backcourt, arguably, in the NBA. I think that Luka and Reeves would have something to say about that. But, I mean, just the pick and roll potency, the shooting, the ball movement, the cutting, the play finishing, all of it. They're insane. And I think that they should be a top 3 offense again. I think they should be a very good defense, but a flawed defense. So I still view them as a strong favorite in the East. I think they're just way more talented than everybody else. I think they have the best offense in the conference. And I think, like, of the teams that are really good offenses, they have clearly the best defensive personnel. So none of that has changed with Cleveland. I just have gotten, as I was saying, a little bit higher on the Rockets and their offense. And when I consider how elite Houston can be defensively, the sort of like pretty flawless defensive lineups they can put out there, I think their defensive potential just exceeds Cleveland's. But I also could totally see myself later in the year feeling like as Cleveland totally hits their stride offensively, well, actually, Cleveland being the better offense, even though Houston's number one in offensive rating right now, but I just think everything about Cleveland's offense translates seamlessly to the playoffs. maybe I'll prefer that a little bit as a formula to knock off an OKC if they got to the finals or whatever. Like, the margin's really, really close between those two teams. But that's where I'm at with the Cavs. They're going to win the East. I still feel confident about that. Unless,
I just hope they're
healthy.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, but very talented basketball teams. So now we are into the top three, Logan. Who is in that 3 spot for you?
This is where I have the Houston Rockets. They have been exceptional to start this season. Right now, they are number 1, points per game, offensive rating, rebounds per game, rebound rate, offensive rebound rate. They are just kicking teams in the mouth. Some of these margins, too, like they are winning the rebounds per game margin by the second-place team in the league by 5. Offensive rebound rate, they're beating the number 2 team by 7.2%. It is actually
setting a record.
It's disgusting. I really like what Houston's got going for them. And so a lot of people would say, okay, preseason, what was the specs on this team? They're an elite rebounding unit. They're a really good defensive team. And now they are now the number 1 team in terms of offensive rating. So why is this team not number 1? Why is this team not cracking the top 2? I do worry about this team a little bit more offensively when we are talking about a playoff kind of scale. Is everything seamlessly going to hold up the way it is during the regular season? Like, my concerns would be, do defenses slant themselves and become a little bit more gimmicky in selling out on some of these skilled players when you have non-shooters like Amen Thompson or Steven Adams, or if Sengun's shot wanes a little bit? You know, our defense is going to slant themselves and dare Houston to shoot on them again, right? Where I think that could maybe compromise some of their offense a little bit. KD I don't worry about as much, you know, maybe in like certain defensive matchups like a Minnesota or somebody who can check him like that, but I think he's going to translate pretty seamlessly. It's more about how defenses scheme against Houston and if they can make them pay for having some of these non-shooters on the floor. You know, the chess game, the strategy within the game. That's where I worry about Houston, because I think this team has a really solid formula. Again, they have a ton of size and athleticism everywhere on the court, and like Carson and I harp on every year, that kind of physicality is always going to translate to the playoffs. And so I think there is a built-in margin with Houston in why I have them in my top 3. They are going to crush teams on the glass. They are going to be rock solid defensively. I'm still a little bit skeptical about the offense and how it's fully going to translate. And when I look at a team like Denver that's in my number 2, it's like the easiest fucking offense I've ever seen, right? Like it is every year. And their bench is so much better. Like, Denver is just answering every question I had about them preseason. Oklahoma City is just answering every question I had about them preseason. So it's like, so with Houston, they have one question that I need answered, even though they've answered it to begin this season. I need to see it in a high-stakes kind of environment.
They're the most interesting team in basketball. I've consistently maintained that because, like, they go against so many philosophies of modern offense. They don't have a point guard. Their spacing by conventional metrics is, like, shitty. And yet they're producing this number 1 offense because they're the best offensive rebounding team that we've seen maybe ever. Like, that's a legitimate conversation. That's a huge part of what they do. And so you think about how they fare in a playoff setting, and it's like, they were an amazing offensive rebounding team last year, like by far the best in basketball, and that remained a big advantage in the playoffs, but their offense did nevertheless drop off a bit in the playoffs just because they're always going to be able to generate extra chances, but there is an element of teams really loading up, packing the paint, as you're saying, helping off of some of these non-shooters who they do play, and like, you can just shrink the floor, and even though the Rockets are still going to get a lot of extra chances, they're going to be less efficient with their chances overall. And coming into the year, I thought them losing Fred VanVleet was going to be a bigger deal than it has been, just because I thought this team needed that kind of ball handling and probably that like pull-up three-point shooting dimension too. Sengun has just become a de facto point guard. Amen Thompson has taken on a bit more of an offensive load, but it's really Sengun who has become just such an elite creator for this team. I mean, 23, 10, and 7.5 on 57% true shooting. His passing as a face-up player, as a driver, has been so good. His finishing has been better. His shooting from beyond the arc, I mean, has been significantly better over a small sample, but volume and efficiency are both way up. And he's getting to the free throw line a lot. Like, he has been so damn impressive for this team, and he's part of what's really moved me. KD has just been what you would expect. I mean, it's not that he's a real advantage creator, a primary ball handler at all, just lethally efficient scorer, 26 points per game on over 63% true shooting, and like, it just feels different for Houston this year. When you look at them in a rock fight, you put them up against a team like Orlando. We saw a great game between those two teams the other day, a really good defense. And it feels like Şengün can pretty much get where he wants in the paint. And it feels like KD can just rise up for a pull-up jumper whenever he wants. And it's just such a big difference from last year. So I agree with you. I still think the lack of like a true natural ball handler, the overall susceptibility to like ball pressure in that way, I think that's why OKC is clearly the toughest matchup for Houston and why it's really tough for me to see Houston beating them. This is a team with the lowest three-point rate in basketball. They actually are number one in three-point percentage right now, but very low three-point volume. Like, these are weird things that do worry me a little bit, and yet I also know, because we've seen it so many times over, the superpowers this team has are legitimate, and like, they do translate. Like, the question is just, how great is this offense? It's not, is this a really good offense? It's, you know, is it actually a Denver level offense or a Cleveland level offense in the playoffs? And that's where I do prefer the more conventional formulas that those teams have. A god tier offensive player, the literal offensive GOAT in my opinion, in Jokic, with a group around him that complements him so well. Again, all of the crazy creation and play finishing and shooting that Cleveland has. Like, I lean on that, but I acknowledge that what Houston is doing is also insane and extremely effective and makes them like such a tough matchup for anybody in basketball. So Şengün and KD, I feel so confident in right now. I think we're at a point where maybe the key player for Houston this season is Amen Thompson, because I think that he can still play much better. I think he's got to pretty much cut out the threes. Like, it just feels like a wasted possession from him. And he's just got to find his touch where he improved last year, floater range, even a little bit of mid-range. He's been bad there this year. But I do think his passing is really popping this season, which has always been such an impressive trait of his. As he's getting more on-ball utilization, he's driving a lot more, and he's just like a walking paint touch for you, and then he can make the passes. And if he can get within 5 feet of the basket, he can finish in some crazy ways. I do think it would probably be better to see him playing actually less out of pick and roll and more just out of straight isolation, because I don't think he typically needs a screen to get past you to get into the paint. And I actually think bringing in the screener and the screen defender, it just allows teams to actually deploy some coverages that can exploit a men's limitations a little bit more, you know, going under screens, obviously, straight drop when he's struggling as much as an intermediate shot maker as he is right now. Whereas it's like, obviously you can always just sag off, play off if he is attacking in isolation. But if you are playing him tightly at all in that situation, if you're trying to pressure the ball, I mean, he can just burn you without that screen, and it's just a little bit cleaner, and he can get into the paint like that so much. He's consistently been more efficient as an isolation creator than a pick and roll creator. That's a little modification, but ultimately I just think got to play better, got to make more shots like what he was making last year. He's weird. And yeah, there's some concerns with him in the half court offensively, but also, like, I was impressed with what he did in the half court offensively in the playoff series last year. He's like the best offensive rebounding wing in basketball. The passing is so good. Houston hasn't played in transition a ton, but Amen is a ridiculously good transition player when he gets out there. They're one of the most efficient transition offenses in basketball. So I really like the Rockets. They've got elite defensive personnel. Their depth is really good. Reed Shepherd, his improvement, right, becoming a legit, viable rotation guy, one of the elite shooters in basketball. Josh Okogie, who has started a lot for this team, he's giving you quality two-way minutes. Tari Eason is giving you quality two-way minutes. Those are a couple guys who maybe are shooting above their means early in the year. But you got to remember, DFS hasn't even played, and he was like one of these two-way wing additions that I really liked for this team. So the offense has just overachieved my expectations is what it comes down to. I thought that KD would make them a pretty good offense. They are looking like an elite offense right now, and that's what makes them a huge threat. So ultimately, yes, I believe in Denver's offense more, and that's why I have them number one. I think that Denver has a better path to beating OKC because I think OKC can expose the limitation that Houston does have offensively more so. And against Cleveland, it's really close. But right now, I mean, Houston's just been more impressive. They've overachieved my expectations. And yeah, if their offense holds up close to this, I do think they have the better defensive personnel than Cleveland. What they do in the possession game, which is a big part of their offense, but it's just so ridiculous. And that translates. That's not like teams are just going to start trying harder on the glass and diminish their advantage there. Like, Houston is just legitimately probably the greatest offensive rebounding team we've ever seen, and that's the personnel they have, and that's what they do.
I was going to say, the smallest player in their starting lineup is 6'7". It's Amen Thompson, right?
Yeah. It's
Good
crazy.
Luck with that.
Well, I think technically Okogie is like an inch or two shorter.
Yeah.
But they're huge. They're absolutely massive. And Amen is a ridiculous offensive rebounder, and Şengün is a ridiculous offensive rebounder, and they are killing people with a double big look still, and Steven Adams is the best offensive rebounder ever. Like, it's crazy. KD's the worst rebounder who plays minutes for them, and he's about 7 feet tall. So, well, not who plays minutes for them, but pretty crazy stuff. That being said, they're not in the top 2. So who is in your 2 spot, Logan? I think we can go a little quicker with these teams since we've talked about them a lot.
I've got the Denver Nuggets here, and the case is pretty simple. They've got the best player on the planet. I think Aaron Gordon is one of the best 4s in the world right now, and they have really addressed their biggest issue, and it has been the bench unit. They have a plus 17.1 net rating with Nikola Jokic. Numbers like that have been pretty standard when Jokic is on the floor. Over the last 4 seasons, when Jokic is off the floor, they have an average net rating of negative 9.1. This season, it's plus 2.1. That's a 11-point swing. That is so massive in just the outlook for this Nuggets team. And I sometimes can feel like this gets beat like a dead horse when the Nuggets broadcast and anytime you talk about Denver, but it is such a big difference maker. You watch a Nuggets game over the last 5 years. Jokic goes off the floor, they got a 20-point lead, boom, evaporated, 3 minutes. It is actually comical. And the fact that they have a competent bench this year makes all the difference. And it is a testament, too, I think, to just how important depth is in the modern NBA and how much you need competent guys throughout your roster. You have to be able to go 8 to 10 deep. That is just a prerequisite for going on a playoff run. That's the bare minimum, man. If you don't have bodies, you're going to get boat raced. And Denver has the bodies this year to go along with, I think, one of the best starting 5s in basketball. Jamal Murray got out to a red-hot start this year. He's cooled down a little bit, but he still looks really good. Gordon looks great. Jokic does. Brown is doing his thing. Cam Johnson's been a little bit of a letdown, but I have such ingrained faith in him to figure it out with this team. The big difference to me, again, the bench unit is huge overall. The guy is Tim Hardaway Jr., man. I think he makes all the difference in the world for this team. The fact that this team has been dead last in 3-point attempted per game over the past few seasons, they have just not had this kind of release valve. Ever since KCP's departure, right? That has been such a huge void in this basketball team. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is even on another level from a guy like KCP where he can just catch, get into the shot, rise and fire. And to be paired with a guy alongside a guy like Nikola Jokic, it is a match made in heaven. So I just think Denver has resoundingly answered all the questions that we've had about them. And I am foaming at the mouth. I am drooling. I am rabid. I am so excited for a hypothetical matchup between the Thunder and the Nuggets this season, man. I really hope we get it. I really do think we're talking about tier breaks. To me, there's a break for Denver, and then there's another break to where OKC is alone. But I think these 2 teams stand alone atop the mountain.
Yeah, I agree. I really, really like Houston, and I really believe in Cleveland, but I do think Denver is even. If it's a mini tier break, whatever, they're above them, clearly, concretely, and it's not really something that I'm debating. And it's because, again, Houston's offense is really good. There's a gap there. Even if it's not showing up in the offensive rating right now, the couple playoff concerns I do have about Houston's offense, even though I'm overall very optimistic about their offense, I think Denver can be one of the all-time great offenses. I think that you look at what they did in 2023, when I think they had the second highest raw offensive rating ever from an NBA champion in a playoff run. This offense is clearly positioned to be better than that team. Now, will Jamal Murray play as well as he did in that playoff run? he's having the best regular season of his career. This is easily the best he's ever started a regular season. So if there ever was a time when he was going to replicate that, this would be it. But more importantly, I think that Aaron Gordon is just a totally different level of weapon that he was then. I mean, his shooting improvement is the most dramatic that we've ever seen in such a short time span in NBA history. He's been a 20-point per game scorer on 68% true shooting, Logan, and it is still such a great cutter, good mismatch stacker, good offensive rebounder, all the same complementary stuff. He's just a significantly better all-around basketball player and like a third fringe star level guy for you now. Cam Johnson, I do still think is a great fit and an elite volume three-point shooter with great size and can really acquiesce to this offense more so than he has. And then you look at the bench and like that's a significant difference. As you said, THG bringing this legit volume three-point shooting. Jonas Valanciunas being easily the best backup center they've had, who is so productive in his minutes. And it's just better everything. I don't want to bury the lead here, but Nikola Jokic is even better and is on pace to have the best offensive season in NBA history and is averaging 29.5, 13 and 11.5 on 74% true shooting. Okay, man. Okay, best paint touch we've ever seen is the best it's ever been. Absolutely ridiculous finishing, absolutely ridiculous shot making across the board. His three-point improvement from last year is totally held up. The defense has been better. Like everything has just been so damn impressive from Denver. So I think that, as we've said a couple times already throughout this episode, they just easily have the best chance of knocking off OKC because I can't say that the Denver offense is perfect. I do still think with Christian Brown and his shooting concerns, there is an ability to shrink the floor, right? To take away some of those passing lanes to cutters, load up with help on Jokic. I think that we have seen that in the playoffs, and CB's got to be better at that when he gets healthy. But way more so than last year, now they have an alternative to turn to. It's not like, hey, Julian Strother, are you ready for some big playoff minutes? It's THJ, get in here, and you can be a flamethrower. And like they could just play this sort of 4-out offense around Jokic with a level of shooting and offensive skill that they've never had before. And the best versions of all these different guys. So that's really, really scary. I think that they're an all-time offense. I think that's totally what they have the potential to be. And if Jokic plays his absolute best basketball, that's how they would pull off the upset. That being said, there's a team that makes it pretty much impossible to play your best basketball against them, and Jokic just got this experience last year, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are obviously number one, Logan.
Yeah, something catastrophic I think would have to happen for me to move OKC off of number one in my list. They're number one in defensive rating again. They have an even better defensive rating with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off the floor, where they're posting a 93.5 defensive rating. When he's not out there, Shai is still one of the handful of best players on the planet and is unstoppable. Yeah. I mean,
if you had a hand with two fingers, he'd still be on that list.
The league is just so talented. But yeah, I mean, SGA's unstoppable. Nobody can stay in front of the guy. Nobody can guard him. You pair that with the best defense in basketball. Chet Holmgren's gotten even better. AJ Mitchell is a real difference maker for this team. We've talked ad nauseum about the Thunder throughout this year. And again, the fact that Jalen Williams has not been available it's ridiculous. OKC is a juggernaut.
Yeah, they're one of the best teams ever. I just don't know how you could predict anybody else. Like, if you think Denver's got the best chance, yeah, I agree. If you think it's possible, yeah, I agree. If you would go into a series and pick it, I think you're nuts. I just think you're insane. Like, I'm just going to read out numbers. We talk about OKC so much. Shai this year is averaging 32, 5, and 7 on 66% true shooting with 1.7 turnovers per game. That's not even playing fourth quarters in a lot of these games. I mean, just incomprehensible guard efficiency, not just because of the finishing at the rim, the foul drawing, the shot making, but also because he is positively influencing the possession game for his team at a level we have never seen before, because he takes on one of the biggest offensive loads in basketball, like the biggest load as a self-creator, and is limiting turnovers to an extent that is completely beyond comparison historically. He had the record for fewest turnovers per game by a 30-point per game scorer at 2.2. He's at 1.7 right now, and he's taking on a bigger offensive load. So just like the efficiency of offense that he is creating from the guard position is totally beyond anybody else in basketball when you account for that. He just had one of the best guard seasons ever, and I think he is clearly playing better this year. And I really want to have some conversations about where he falls now among the highest guard peaks in NBA history. I want to do an updated version of that conversation because I think he's on my Mount Rushmore there now among the highest guard peaks ever. Like, he just might be the most efficient guard on ball with this sort of volume in NBA history. He probably is, honestly. And they've got a 124 offensive rating with him on the court. Then you have the emergence of AJ Mitchell, who hasn't just become like a third ball handler for this team, but he's one of the best bench creators in basketball. 16, 4, and 4 on 55% true shooting. Chet Holmgren playing at an all-NBA level. You know, I've had this ongoing debate between my two loves of him and Evan Mobley over the years, and I thought they were both incredible prospects, number one guys in their class. I was higher on Chet as a prospect. I thought he had more offensive upside and just more upside overall. And then last year, I mean, it was really the Mobley breakout, and I thought, you know, Chet hasn't quite progressed as much this year offensively compared to the leap that Mobley had just taken. And now, like, Chet has come back and snatched the chain in this imaginary debate that is going on only in my head. But, like, he's been clearly the better of the two this year. He's tapping into that crazy upside that he does have with just his different level of fluidity and, like, effortless three-point shooting. He looks the best he ever has. He's averaging 20 and 8 on 71% true shooting, over 69% on twos, over 40% on threes, over 86% from the line. They're running more offense for him. He looks more comfortable than ever before. Absolute monster because he's also a top 2 defender on the planet. And this defense, which was one of the best ever last year, which I said was the best in at least 2 decades, at least since the 04 Pistons, they are now not just on pace to set the record for the best relative defensive rating in the play-by-play era, which is currently held by the 04 Spurs at 8.5 points better than league average. The Thunder are currently 11.9 points better than league average in defensive rating. It's like the gap between them right now and the second best relative defense of like the last 3 decades is the same as the gap between that number 2 defense and the 48th best defense in that time. It's just not out of the question that it's the best defense that we've seen since the 60s Celtics. So no matter how great any of these offenses are, I still think that OKC defense is clearly the most dominant, valuable unit in the NBA. And it's the only defense in this offensive-centric league in decades, probably since the 04 Pistons or maybe the 08 Celtics, that I can confidently say is the most valuable unit in the sport. And so then you pair that with the fact that they're the best in the possession game when it comes to turnover differential that we've seen in so long. They're plus 7.6 points per game off turnovers versus their opponents. One of the best in terms of transition margin. They never let you get out in transition, and they excel in transition off of your mistakes, off your turnovers. They're plus 6 points per game in the transition margin. And they've got a god in the half court in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And the best players around him, most important, are developing exactly like you would have hoped, if not exceeding it, and they're 14-1 with a 15.2 net rating without an all-NBA player on the court. I say this stuff all the time, but like, we're just looking at one of the best teams ever, and I don't think that there's any other logical conclusion, and I think that they're going to be better in the playoffs this time around, if not significantly better than they were last year. I think everything about this team is better last year. I think like J-Dub could come back and J-Dub could be like noticeably better than last year. But right now, I think this version of Chet is playing even better than the all-NBA version of J-Dub did last year. Like, you're now talking about 3 all-NBA level players on this team with the guard at one of the highest peaks in NBA history. It's just insane. I mean, you take a 68-win team, and they're the youngest champion in almost 50 years, and they bring everybody back, and they have all these assets, and they have the craziest development record in the NBA, and yeah, they're even better. And I've said I think they're going to win 70 games. It's unbelievable. I'm just blown away by this team. I'm not surprised, but even knowing that the standard for them coming into the year was the highest it's been for any team since the peak Warriors, they have met, if not exceeded, that standard. They've probably exceeded it. So I just think when you're going up against a GOAT-level defense that can do what they did to every offense that they faced last year, and they have the offensive formula that they do, and they have maybe the highest floor in NBA history we were discussing with Tyler, they're a level up from everybody else. It's just that simple. Denver's amazing. Denver is significantly better than they were last year. Houston is amazing and way better than they were last year. I think Cleveland even can be better than they were last year. And I still really struggle to see anybody beating the Thunder. So that's where I'm at. Any final thoughts, Logan?
We're just D1 Thunder Glazers, man.
I just consider it being more so a man of logic, a man of sound mind and body, because this is just what they do. And it's so routine, and it's like, what more takeaways can you even have at this point? Like, it's just the inevitability of greatness. It becomes mundane. It becomes expected. And if you try to get cheeky and you try to say, oh, well, actually, this is what's going to come back to get them in the playoffs, I just don't know, man. With how Shai is playing right now, I think Shai's set up for a better playoff run. I think they will shoot better. I think Chet will be significantly better. AJ's a revelation. And I've said all this stuff before, so I'm going to stop now. But, yeah. They're just different, man. They're just totally different. Okay, there you have it, folks. Our top 10 contenders at this point in the season in the NBA. Let us know where you agree, where you disagree. I'm sure there will be some controversy, but I do think the top of this list is actually where things get pretty clear. The bottom is where things are very interesting and definitely up for conversation. So if you want more of our stuff, you know where to find us all across YouTube. You can see all of our full episodes and all of our video essays, video breakdowns that we do on the NBA. You can also listen to the podcast across all audio platforms, and you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. If you want our daily trivia content, some takes from the show, clips from the show, graphics, of course. And if you want to join our community over on Discord, you can do so through the link at the link tree across our social media bios. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.